I didn't do it. You got to do better than that, man. Come on.
That's the best I got. Welcome to our city council meeting tonight, April 12th, 2022. We appreciate those who have joined us this evening. We'll start our meeting tonight.
He's coming.
Maybe Councilmember Severing was going to give us the invocation or thought and pledge of allegiance. It's like herding cats. I'm telling you.
Brian said, you got plenty of time.
Uh-huh.
That just great.
Well, now that Councilmember Severing is with us, we will have him give us a thought, a invocation, or whatever he'd like, and then we will proceed with the pledge of allegiance thereafter.
And I'll say a prayer, Mayor. Heavenly Father, we come before thee tonight. Very grateful for the blessings of being able to assemble. We're grateful for the Constitution and the blessings that and guidance that it gives us. We pray this night for guidance and direction. We love to serve. We care and we have passion for what we do, and we love the city. Pray for those who might struggle with their health and those who might grieve, that they might be strengthened. Again, give thanks and pray for this tonight. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
If everybody would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing. We appreciate that. We're now going to have a special occasion. I don't think we've done this for 39 years. So this is somewhat new for us. But we have a new judge that will serve as our Justice Court judge, Mike Junk, and I would just say I had the opportunity to interview the 4 finalists that were selected by the Judicial Search Committee. I did a lot of probably extra research. For those of you who know me, I kind of like to get my facts together. So I talked to many people that know Judge Junk, and sterling recommendations for him. He has been a lifelong resident of Weber County, graduated from Bonneville High School, for which we did not deduct any points.
We lost to Weber often, so.
Yes, he graduated from Weber State University, and I understand he was the outstanding graduate in economics, which is not easy at Weber State. I can tell you that. He did go to the University of Utah Law School. Once again, we did not deduct any points on that.
I'll stand up for that. I will.
Yeah,
I said I'll stand for that. I know all you Kruger fans. West is with me on this.
All right. And after some time in private practice, Mike served as a prosecutor for many years in the city of Ogden. He was also, I believe, the city attorney for Harrisville, for which we added points. And he is currently the judge for the Justice Court in Ogden. He has also been an adjunct professor at Weber State University. So you can see that he comes well qualified. The best thing he's done is married Kathy, for which he received a lot of extra points in that regard.
The 2 of us, I should get bonus, right?
I was thinking she should get a lot of bonus there, but they're the parents of 6 children and have 9 grandchildren. So Mike, welcome to the North Ogden City family. Mike knows probably the thing you heard from me the most is we need to be top priority on his list, and he's committed to do that. And so we're happy to have Mike with us. And I believe Susan is going to swear Judge Junk in at this time.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I, Michael S. Jones,
I, Michael S. Jones,
having been appointed
the office of
North Ogden City Justice Court Judge,
the office of North Ogden City Justice Court Judge,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will support,
that I will support,
obey, and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of
of
Utah,
the State of Utah,
and that I will
and that I will
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of my office
of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity. Oh, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Would you like to say a few words?
Oh,
Because I think you're the first judge that's ever served free gratis, so thank you.
That's, well, thank you first. This is a great opportunity. I'm really happy to be out here. And so I start with you, Mayor. You know, I know that you put this particular decision to a lot of thought. And I could tell just in meeting with you, you don't decide things quickly, but yet it ended up being me. And so I was very, very pleased, and I will live up to my commitment. Just a couple of things. First, I just really want to say how honored I am to follow our great prior judge. Pat was, there's something about Pat that he just has an honorability and really served North Ogden and really this whole area very well. And so it's a great honor for me to follow him and to serve in the same place. And I hope that I can bring some dignity to this opportunity. One thing I do want to point out, Judge West is probably one of my greatest mentors throughout my whole life, at least in the legal career. He has been somebody that through just from almost when I first started, somebody that I turned to, and has always been somebody that has been there for me. And the one thing that I have to give the judge is that he never looked down on me. I would ask him what I think were probably some stupid questions, but he just always explained it in a way that was easy for me to understand. And through that process, we've become good friends. And I think the world of him. I really do. He's one of the great legal minds in our area, and what a great resident to have here. I mean, really, Judge West is as good as there can be. I do see Rich Gallegos back there. I just want to point him out. He's our public defender. And I'm going to tell you, I know I'm probably spent a lot of time, and that's the problem. Letting me speak sometimes is I enjoy it sometimes, but we have this is incredible. The individuals that are working here, and I'm carving myself out of this, but I'm telling you, Brandon Miles, where is Brandon? Oh, there he is. This is the finest prosecutor that we have in probably the northern Utah. He's bright, he's funny, he's got a great sense of humor, but Brandon, to have this quality, to represent North Ogden as a prosecutor the whole time it's just amazing. My wife, her brother is Chris Allred, the county attorney. And we were talking on the way out, and I'm trying to get information on who, if we meet and stuff, but I said, look, Brandon Miles is the brains behind Chris's operation. Chris may be the person that's out front, but Brandon Miles is the true brains behind it, and really think so highly of him. And Rich Gallegos is, I mean, this guy, he's going to be a district court judge, a lot higher than me, just because he is somebody that he just is, he's a credit to our profession. We had an attorney that died recently, just under some sad experience, but Rich was willing to step in and reached out to every one of his clients and said, I will represent you and help you through this process, just out of willingness to represent all of us attorneys, but just to help a fellow attorney. So I guess that's what I'll end now, but what an incredible group that we have. And then, of course, Laura, she's one of the best clerks there is in the whole area. I mean, I just, from the moment we started, she was there. She's so dedicated. She's so good. And that's the thing. I hope that we won't miss a step with me as a judge. And that's what my promise is to all of you. And so I thank you for this opportunity.
I do have to reveal, I talked to both Brent and Brandon. Brandon was in Arizona in a pair of shorts. But he took my call and talked to me, and Judge West, who used to coach the Bad News Bears Little League baseball team, he and he did put up with me. So he is a good man. So welcome again.
Thank you.
And we're glad to have you here. We'll proceed now. At this point in time, council, you've had a chance to look at the agenda and the packet. And I would ask if you have any conflicts of interest, and now would be the time to disclose potential conflicts of interest. Council? I see no one volunteering any conflicts, so we'll go to item number 3. We'll now entertain public comments. Once again, if you would state your name, if you'd like to comment, long if you're a resident of North Ogden, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes. John, do we have any in mind this evening?
Just staff members.
All right. So now would be the time, public, if you'd like to make any comments. All right, I'm not seeing anyone jumping up and coming to the podium, so we will now go on to item number 4 on our agenda. This will be led by our planning director and John Call, our city manager and attorney, and this will be a discussion on a development agreement with Shaw Century Farms for land located approximately 281 East Pleasant View Drive. Scott?
Mayor, council, thank you. I was a little sad everybody left. I thought they were here for us to do this presentation. So now I'm just throwing off my game, sorry. We've got development agreement, item number 4, and then we have item number 5, which is a rezone. And these 2 items are really tied at the hip. And I think staff would ask that we hold decision-making on them until we look at both of them, and then we can decide individually. But we'll begin with the development agreement. John has pulled this up for your review. This is in relation to Shaw Century Farm. Shaw is in the name? Yes? Century Farm?
Yeah.
Okay. So Shaw Century Farm, this is a development over off of Pleasant View Drive, between Pleasant View and Lowman View Drive. Single family development that's gone through a rezone process. We're here to talk about the rezoning text amendment. This would be the conclusion development agreement, and tonight would be the conclusion of a year-long process on a zoning map amendment that was applied for approximately March last year. That's when we went to planning commission. So we have up on the screen the 36 lots. The development agreement specifies what happens on there it is. What happens on parcel A, which is an open space parcel that is part of the applicant's property here on the development. This is a well site, culinary water, and then there's a parcel C, which is off of this in this plat altogether, but this is city-owned property. Development agreement specifies as a cash donation from the developer of $100,000 to help improve this remainder parcel here. And then the understanding is that parcel A would be either improved with sod and sprinklers, and or the funds as estimated for those improvements be granted along with the $100,000 so the city can complete it all at once. There is a performance timeframe in the development agreement that talks about if the city's unable to perform these improvements, that we actually give the money back. That's in December of 2025. So we've got 3 years to approve that. Parks and Rec Director has talked to us, talked to staff as well as council about the opportunities for Weaver ramp funding, recreation matching funds. And I think that with a strong private sector match to that public sector improvement, we have a real good opportunity to secure those funds. But if not, we would be talking to you over the next few budget years about what to do with a partial match and then ways to improve this. Altogether, this creates about an acre of park space for 36 units that, in combination with the stump site and other park area, really will make a whole neighborhood and a betterment. And this has turned out to be a really good process. So myself or John, happy to take any questions you have specifically about the development agreement right now.
And so,
John, did you have something you'd like to say?
it is. So I know that the developer has some questions about the expectation for partial A, is we texted back and forth while I was in meetings today. Right now it's set up as a $15,000 donation to cover the improvement for the sod and the sprinklers. I believe the communication was, their understanding was that was wrapped into the $100,000. So that'd be something that the council should talk about with them at the right point. And then the other thing was a question about the date. Sorry, I'm in the wrong spot. I had talked with the developer earlier in the week, and we had recommended maybe moving it to a 2024 date as opposed to a 2025, just so that the residents there are not required to be without a park for very long. So,
John, I think the date is, and correct us, is based upon when we think we can get the ramp grant and utilize that on the project. Do you feel we can do that by 2024? Because the next grant period will be what, about this time in 2023? And we'd be going into the winter time. You think we can get that done in 18 months?
so the way the grants are approved is in theory, or they're approved in the spring and then available after July. The county will allow us to start spending money, but we can't ask for a refund till their fiscal year, is my understanding. And so we technically would have 2 ramp grant cycles to apply for the funds. If we didn't get them the first time, we could then apply for them again in 2024. And hopefully be successful in the second attempt, but that would be our last shot at it. So we'd have 2 more shots to get the money, or I guess 2 shots since we haven't applied yet.
Councilman Swanson?
My only concern with moving it to 2024 is that our water situation continues to be, especially with regard to secondary water, unless we're looking at pressurizing the well water that's there to take care of this park. Not knowing what the future winters are going to look like, I'd be more comfortable keeping it at the 2025, just so that we have that window, little extra window of time to deal with ongoing drought conditions if necessary.
I'm assuming we could accelerate that if all the pieces fall into place, John. It'd just give us a little cushion. I do think we want to get that completed for the residents as the development takes place, but it does give us a cushion. Any other comments on that, council? I guess the item of discussion then would be the council's understanding on the donation in regards to the potential park. I guess the developer is indicating that he thought that was 100,000 in total. John, I guess you remember the discussion being a little different than that, or is that how you recall the discussion?
I thought the original discussion was the improvements would go in, and then the 100,000 would be in addition. And then based on what I was recommending to the council was that we collect the money for the improvements, because we don't want to put them in and then come back in with a new design from ramp and tear everything up that we just put in 12 months earlier. And that's what I believe I recommended to the council at the last meeting. That's my understanding or my memory of the discussion.
Council, is your memory any different than that? Like you're the only one on this side not shaking their head. Is your memory different than that? Or?
I have a bad memory. I just remember the $100,000 being discussed. I can't remember the other details on it.
Okay,
That's what I remember, was so that we were not gonna have to tear it out. So they weren't gonna approve something and then go back when we got more money and think, oh, we gotta do something different. Like, we don't wanna put in just sod and sprinklers and then have them be, you know, a design come later. So I was just remembering 100,000 total, but I don't amounts, and I don't necessarily aren't simpatico all the time. So I'm just thinking, if you remember $100,000 being mentioned.
I guess we have the minutes somewhere.
Yes.
I don't know.
So are we talking about $115,000 or?
That's what the development agreement, I think, states right now. Is 100,000 for the improvements on the city's portion of the project. And the
Developer with 15?
the developer, instead of putting in grass and sprinklers, would contribute 15. That's how the agreement's written. We can surely hear from the applicant right now if we'd like.
Scott, what do you remember? Oh, sorry, Mayor.
Scott, what do you remember?
I actually wasn't at that meeting, so John presented that, and I remember just discussing it up to that point, that parcel A was always going to be approved, but I wasn't actually at the council meeting.
Okay.
I'd have to go back to maybe the minutes
All
as
right.
well.
Mr. Hanson, would you like to address us as the applicant?
I'm John Hanson, 1165 West, 4000 North in Pleasant View. I think the donation, John has it right. I would give $100,000 for your park, and then an additional 15,000 to do parcel A. And those are good numbers. With sod is about 70 cents a square foot. And the sprinkling system bid by Chambers, Gary Chambers, he said it'll be between, with prices moving between 65 and 7,500. So John and I, we rounded it off at 15,000.
All right.
Have any other questions? But
No, that's good.
okay,
Thank you.
that was easy.
That was actually how I remembered it too, John. So. All right. You want to talk about the next item then, or are there any other questions on the development agreement, council? All right, let's go ahead and talk about the ordinance to rezone the land located there.
So we have, thank you, Mayor and Council. We have a couple of things going. We have a zoning map amendment application, which was ZMA 2021-01. So it's the first one of 2021 last year. That was originally for an R3 designation, went through Planning Commission and was postponed by the council based on compatibility in the area with multifamily, single family, and the general plan. In the meantime, the applicant works on a handful of different configurations. This being configuration presented to the council that would ultimately be the recommended rezone. And we don't currently have a zone that would permit this. So the zoning text amendment that's before you today and has gone through Planning Commission, had a unanimous recommendation, creates the entitlement process. It creates the zone, the Century Farm zone that would be applied to this particular project to meet its standards. So the zone was written specifically to meet this requirement. The closest, it's kind of a modified residential R15 zone. So it does go down to 4,000 square foot lots. And it's similar to the Quail Ponds PRUD, but it is not required to meet all of the planned residential unit development requirements. So a PRUD is a specific zoning tool that typically has landscaping standards and open space standards and different things that are all tied into the PRUD standards. This is essentially a standalone zone, the Century Farm zone, that could technically be applied to other areas of the city if somebody wanted to apply for it, and get something similar to this, but it really is a zone that was written to meet the drawing that you had seen and that everybody was kind of give a thumbs up for. So we have standards, 4,000 square foot minimum lot area, 40-foot minimum lot width. That is narrower than some of the lots we have. 50 feet is pretty standard. Applicant's been talked to about our driveway standards and requirements there of public works standards. So they have actually fit a home, a floor plan onto each one of these lots. Front setbacks would be 20 feet unless the garage is behind the front of the house, in which case it could be 18 feet. Interior side yards are 5 feet, so that's 5 feet on their sides, 10 foot of separation between structures. Street side is generally 15 feet, but I don't know if you can go back to the plat. The 15 feet would be for street side, except for 2 lots, lot number 14 and 34. So this one here and this one here were a little bit narrow for that house plan to fit, so they've requested an adjustment to 12. This isn't unprecedented. The Quail Ponds zone has a few specific ones for specific lots that narrow down, and then rear yard setbacks are 15 feet. It's a minimum 1-story, maximum 2-story, up to 28 feet tall, so these aren't going to be huge structures. They're a little shorter than some of the other structures we permit at 35 feet. And then your total under roof standard is 45%, and the minimum vegetation area is 40%. So it's a little less than our R18 zone, which is more like 40 and 50% as far as the open space, but you're down to 4,200 square foot lots. So by the time you have a house with a 2-car garage and a patio roof cover and concrete, you're gonna, be pushing up against that 50 to 60% lot coverage at that point. There's some advantages of going this way. This is all public improvements. So we are, the city would ultimately own and maintain 300 East as well as 1 cul-de-sac, but the long-term benefit of that is that 36 homeowners aren't having to take care of a pretty significant north-south road in the city or a cul-de-sac. So this is no HOA, no additional HOA fees. It has an opportunity to be a more affordable single-family product for the city. And then just a point of clarification for the rezone request itself is the original rezone request was for the entire parcel, and the ultimate rezone request that would be to this new Century Farm zone, should the council choose to agree with it and adopt the development agreement, would exclude lots 35 and 36. So lot 35 and 36, configuration of the ground made it really difficult to access those in the same small lot configuration. And so they were purposely held at 20,000 square feet plus. And they'd like to retain the RE20 zoning designation, which just gives you a broader variety of options that you can do. You can do some animal keeping on those larger lots, which is, along the lines of what has originally and long-term been there. But really it just preserves some land use rights on those 2 particular lots that would not be the same if they're transitioned into a standard residential zone. So with that, it's the zoning text amendment request tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Councilman Barker, I think I missed you on a question you had before we
Oh, no, you're
proceed.
fine. I was just curious, do we have to make a decision on the date for the development agreement in the park?
I think to get the development agreement signed, which would be the first step towards proceeding, most likely. I mean, we can always amend it if necessary, but I think that'd be the first step to get things moving. So it's okay. John, do you have anything to add to Mr. Hess's presentation that's of significance?
Significance.
Okay, perfect. Any questions, council? Councilmember Swanson.
Just to recap for myself, so we would be approving Century Farm Zone, which is a new zone created, 4,000 square foot minimums, except for 35 and 36, which would remain RE20.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. And this zone, this newly created zone, fits within the intent of our
General plan?
Yes, General Plan Advisory Committee. And the intent there, right, with the overlays and all the work that was done there.
Yep.
Okay. And is a zone that could be applied to other, this new zone could be applied for use in other parts of the city.
It technically could. It's a zone that will exist the same way you could technically request like quail ponds
Sure.
zoning somewhere else.
Okay.
Staff's recommendation in that case would be if we want to explore some sort of R1-4 zone, then let's do that and just create a standardized zone for it. But
So this is effectively though an R14.
technically, but yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, it's
got it?
clear in my brain, I think.
All right, good. I'm just a little bit concerned about the naming of the zone. I don't have any objections to the zone. But, we're not really used to naming things after people in the city, and
This one doesn't have, the zone doesn't have Shaw in it, just says Century Farm,
okay, good.
but we can, that'd be a point of discussion. Yeah.
And just as a reminder, how this thing started, I think the applicant came to us, wanted to put numerous townhomes there. I believe that what we're trying to do here is this is a new concept. This will bring some different type of housing to the area. Use the term more affordable. I would use the term less expensive.
That's fair.
But I think this is something that if we see can work, will provide opportunity in our city for some different type of housing, maybe less expensive. And I think the other thing that should be mentioned here as we kind of experiment here, as far as I know, this is the first time a developer has agreed to partner with the city in providing open space for a more dense area. So I think this sets some standards that we can look back on, and we're counting on this being a very successful development, one that the city can be proud of. So any questions, council? Councilmember Dalpas, please.
I did like the idea of extending the date out to 2025 for Phil's reason. Also with the thought, what in the off chance that we don't get the ramp grant and we could try on the next cycle. So there's also that piece to it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Can I just ask a clarifying question that John, you go first?
Mr. Call?
I'm just gonna make sure that, assuming this is passed, just as a clarification, that if we're gonna call it the Century Farm Zone, and it just Shaw is in there a couple times and it's said both ways, so let's just make it clear which way we're naming it for Susan's purposes.
I would say the Shaw name should not be in there. We don't name things after people in the city
Not at all.
at this point, unless we have Barker Park or something. I think we'll be changing that too. So. Councilman Barker.
Speaking of that, I'm actually in favor of moving the date to 2024 because there's a park that's been sitting for 20 years that's never been developed. So I'm of the opinion we do it as quick as possible. We get to chances for ramp. If we're still in a drought, there's other types of parks. Maybe it's time we change grass and sod and go to something different, but I'm of the opinion we should move the date up, like the developer's asking. Let's get it done.
Okay. Other comments?
I just had one
Scott?
question. So because we have so many moving entitlement pieces, it's a kind of a question for John, but does the acceptance of the development agreement tonight complete the zoning map amendment application 2021-01, or do we need to come back in 2 weeks and actually formally complete the rezone?
So typically we would have the two different ordinances, one for the text addition and then one for the map amendment. So I think we'd need to bring the map amendment back. But it would be seen really probably more as a formality, but we could bring the agreement back on that meeting. Council, I think because we did get final approval from the planning commission on the rezone recommendation, right?
Well, planning commission has already weighed in on a recommendation for R3. So their piece is done. Theirs was sent, it's been in your court since then. They've also now seen it as a single family product and supported it verbally, but they don't have any further action or public hearings to take on it. So it's just this, it's a tabled item that we need to bring back.
Yeah, and just as a reminder for the council as well as the audience, when you get something from the planning commission, you can say yes, you can say no, or you can modify. And so this would, in theory, they recommended R3, and this is now a modification of their recommendation. But it would be a zoning amendment that we bring back next meeting.
And so I guess that is another option, is to provide staff clarity on the development agreement. We can bring that back with the zoning map amendment. It won't change the timing for the developer any, it's 2 weeks. It doesn't matter either way you want to do it.
So if I understand, we wouldn't be approving the development agreement nor the rezone this evening.
You can
I
finish.
mean, as long as it doesn't delay the developer.
Yeah, so the zoning text amendment it's its own standalone piece.
Right.
So we could do that, but it would be the zoning map amendment that's still floating out there that just didn't get rolled all the pieces.
Councilmember Swanson.
Question for John. So John, we can pass the development agreement tonight, correct? It just won't have the map amendment.
It wouldn't take any effect until the ordinance for the map was approved.
Right, but we could pass that tonight.
Sure.
And we can pass the rezone,
The zoning text.
The zone text.
the zone text amendment.
Which is-
But again, the map coming back in 2 weeks.
So we'd be approving item number 4 and postponing item number 5, if I understand right. Doing 4 and 5.
You can do 4 and 5. There's
There's just a
5A.
third
There's a
item.
third item that didn't get,
That's the map.
yeah, it should have,
So the map would come back in 2 weeks.
yeah, that was my fault. It should have been packaged together with the development agreement, and it wasn't combined, like basically pulled back up from the table.
Since it's not on the agenda, I guess we can't approve it anyway if we
Yeah,
wanted
can't
to.
do the zoning map tonight.
Okay, council. We have item number 4 before us, which would be agreement number A06-2022. That agreement currently has the date of December of 2025. Councilmember Barker has talked about another date. So I'd be looking for a motion at this point in time to approve the development agreement at Century Farms for land located approximately 281 East Pleasant View Drive. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Swanson, what would you like your motion to be?
Mayor, I'll move that we approve the development agreement with Shaw Century Farms for the zone, the development agreement, A06-2022, with the 2025 date for park completion.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Swanson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dalpaz. Is there any further discussion on this issue? All right, council will take a roll call vote in regards to approving this agreement, A06-2022. Let's start with you, Councilmember Severing.
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalpaz,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
and Councilmember Swanson.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 5, which is an ordinance identified as ordinance 2022-08. This would be an action to rezone land located at approximately 281 East Pleasant View Drive. Do we have a motion to approve that rezone?
Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance 2022-08 at 281 East Pleasant View Drive.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Ekstrom. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Call?
So we just need to make it clear, it's not the rezone, it's the rezone text amendment. And it is confusing because in the whereases of the text amendment, it's talking about the pending rezone application, but just so everyone's on the same page, and again, for Susan's records, it's a text amendment.
Well, I'm reading the item on the agenda. And it says there's a motion to approve a rezone of land So apparently, if it's not on the agenda as a text amendment, can we technically pass it? Because the agenda item says a rezone.
So it wasn't, it was listed wrong on the agenda. So either way, it all has to wait till next week before everything's final. So maybe we ought to just bring it both back next meeting. Council, make it clear.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Does anybody want to rescind that motion?
So we're rescinding.
Yeah, there's a motion on the
Both 4
table
and
right
5.
now with a second. Number 5 is what we're
Just 5 only.
going to postpone.
I'd move that we table agenda item number 5,
Postpone.
postpone until, okay, postpone. I move that we would postpone then agenda item number 5, the ordinance to rezone land located at 281 East Pleasant View Drive.
Okay. He's restated his motion. Do we have a second to his motion?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Ekstrom. All in favor of tabling this agenda item, please say aye. Postponing. Postponing this. Yes, I'm correcting Councilmember Ekstrom. Postponing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right. We're getting there, slow but sure. All right, we'll now move on to item number 6. So we're going to be talking about budgets this evening. I believe we're going to start with Councilmember Swanson. He's going to talk to us about finance, and I guess, please, that'll work. And he's going to give us an overview of the budget and talk about finance department, what we're trying to do there and accomplish. Talk about some of the outcomes.
John, do you have that budget slide?
Just a second, I gotta pull it up. I'm in the wrong folder.
It's okay.
So we have to leave the door open for the open meeting. You just usually ask them to scoot out. Thank you.
You have to go shush.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead and ask. Next slide. So as we've been discussing in our budget season this year, we're talking with each of our departments about deliverables, right? Asking our departments, what is it that they will deliver to the residents? They understand that the finance department primarily serves the council in formulating budget, accounting, and all that kind of good thing. So the deliverables would be obviously having our budget completed and all the paperwork done. Having all of the work done, the amazing amount of work that goes into having our audit completed each year. We know how much fun that can be. And it's a huge task that the finance department takes on and accomplishes for us each year. Quarterly audit committee reports. Each quarter, we are meeting with our audit committee and reporting the city's finances and the city's financial health to that committee for their comment and not really oversight, because they're not an oversight committee, but for their counsel and for their wisdom. So all of those reports are prepared by our finance department. Our monthly reports that we get to council, all the tax numbers that we have come in each month are prepared for and delivered by the finance department. And then one of the big issues that we've had that we have every year is making sure that we're in compliance with state and federal guidelines with respect to accounting principles and finance within a municipal organization. So these are the deliverables. That's a hard one to say sometimes. Deliverables. Like elf, that's fun to say, deliverables. Anyway, John, next slide, please.
Councilmember Swanson.
Yes, sir.
Before you move on, I was just wondering on these deliverables, being the accounting guy I am, are there any measurable deliverables? Some of the things I thought about is,
Go back, Joe. There we go.
is on the audit. The state auditor gives us a score on risk management each year. I would like to see us develop a threshold for improvement in that score. I know there's some things that are on the way now with our ethics policy. As you recall there, for a number of years, we were kind of in the high risk category. So I was just wondering, as you proceed along in the audit, if we could set some goals there to increase that score and make sure that we stay in the low risk category. With Jamie there, that's kind of an automatic, but
Yeah, I think with what we've done in the audit committee already, we're already headed in that
Yeah.
direction and have identified a number of items. But I think we can spell that out in our deliverables.
because there's certain scores that we get there.
Sure.
And then, as you know, not since Jamie has taken over, but for a number of years, we didn't submit our audit on time, which puts us at risk of not getting our sales tax from the state. So I think, that's a measurable on which we'd like to have that submitted on time. But I just wanted to throw a couple of those things out as
Certainly,
deliverables that could be measured and reported back on.
we can do that.
Thank you.
Jamie, let's you and I sit down and talk about some of these hard deadlines and dates that we have and that we're looking to meet anyway, and then we can actually spell those out. Okay? Thank you, Mayor. John? Next slide, please. Finance Department provides our internal controls over finance and accounting, handles liability insurance, and does all of our general accounting throughout the city. You can see their accounts payable, fixed assets, payroll, and there's a number of other small things, small things that keep you quite busy. They keep finance quite busy. John, next slide, please. The total budget for the finance department is $321,000 or 1% of the city's total budget. Now, of that 321,000, Jamie has provided me with some nice numbers here. There's an admin fee offset of $143,553, which are the admin fees that are charged to various departments to pay for the services that they receive through the finance department. That leaves a remainder of $177,635 that comes out of the general fund directly to the finance department. Does that help everybody understand how? And that 177 is basically 2% of the general fund. Of the 321,000, 75% are personnel costs, 25% are operational costs. The core value within the finance department, you can see there is internal customer service. Their job and their goal is to provide that internal financial customer service to all of our departments, to council, to mayor, city manager, and other individuals within the city. Questions? Mayor, fire away.
I do. Could you address the additional investment we've made to make sure we are in compliance in our finance department with, I think, the expansion of personnel there?
Jamie, what's been our, I don't know off the top, I can't remember off the top of my head, the expansion in personnel that we've made.
So actually, we're down a half I should say, a half of the FTE. We used to have 2.5 full-time equivalents, and now we're down to 2.
Yeah, we hired in a new accounts payable clerk though, right?
We did.
We kind of had a part-time there.
Right.
We did have a full-time kind of
So-
treasurer before, but could you outline that? Because, Bryce now serves as our treasurer.
Right, but his wages are not in the finance department, so.
Right.
So we had a finance director, a treasurer, and at one time it was a full-time AP, but then recently they went to part-time. And then about a year and a half later, they quit. And so now there's just the finance director and then the accountant that is now in the department.
Thank you.
Just some general numbers for you in reflection of the staffing within the finance department. Our salaries and wages in fiscal year actual 2021 were $200,234. fiscal year 22-23 proposed is 175,733. So there is.
Without benefits, correct?
That's without benefits. Benefits in 2021 actual were 93,340, and proposed for 22-23 is 69,785. So we've seen a reduction in those numbers, although there is some pickup that went to other departments like Bryce and those. Yes, Mayor.
Council, any other questions? I was hoping that he'd give us a education on unfunded depreciation tonight.
No, that's coming from.
You know,
I mean, that's one reason I came is to,
you really want to talk about it?
get unfunded depreciation. No, I don't.
Jamie, do you have that number off the top of your head? Last I remember it was 455 and change.
Yeah, so
Something along.
we'll
All I
address
know
that.
is that debits don't equal credit in the government account.
Yes, that is true. Jamie, is there anything you would like to add to Councilmember Swanson's presentation?
No, I think you did good. Thank you.
So,
I will simply add to council that in the little over 8 years I've been here, I have never felt more confident in our finance department than I do at this time.
I think along those lines, it might be well to discuss what we've done in regards to help Jamie gets from an outside third party who we've engaged, and we've actually changed audit firms. But I think we are in a position now where we have a very knowledgeable individual that is helping Jamie in the preparation of the audited financial statements.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, council, you remember that we engaged Gary Kennington, I believe is his last name, right? To do our audit moving away from the previous auditor that we've had for some time. And we found that there were a lot of things that had been missed and a lot of deficiencies that we had. And so with having Gary, we then decided to make an offer to them to be our outside CPA help for our finance department and making sure that we are on top of everything that we need to be on top of, so that when we do have our audits, everything is smooth and clean and clear and we're on time, and not risking our sales tax and all of that. So we have, I'm trying to remember the exact contract. I wanted to say, I can't remember the exact dollar amount, but they are our external consultants. Accounting firm consultants, and then we have hired yet a different audit firm, knowing that with the help of Gary Kennington and his group, we'll be ready for any audit that comes along well ahead of time. It's going exceptionally well having them as our consultants.
Any
Any other questions?
And I would just say there's two types of investments, monetary and qualitative. And I'm with you, Councilmember Swanson, at this point in time. I think we've made the appropriate investments in making sure we have the right people in the right seats, as some would say, on the bus. And I think we've got somebody, Jamie hired somebody that's very knowledgeable about her job in accounts payable. And then I think, Jamie is very familiar and is doing a great job. So
the level of expertise that we need as our city grows more complex continues to increase. And we have those experts in place from Jamie on up through Gary and our accounts payable. We have those experts in place now. It's a great place to be.
Jamie, do you recall what the audit was? Seems like it was in the $9,700 range or something. 10.5. And what is it we're paying Gary?
Or, excuse me, the audit was 14, Gary was 10.5.
So the new auditors are 14.
Gilbert and Stewart, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilmember Ekstrom
And Dave.
and Dave. We're going to talk about our enterprise funds this evening, which is basically water, sewer, garbage, storm, water.
So before we get started on that, can I ask John and Mayor if we could
do a presentation to just highlight one of our departments. So we're gonna highlight the water department. It's something we're gonna try to do every month throughout the whole city. And so we were lucky to be the first ones to do it. And so we just wanted to highlight the water department first year. Is this working? So
Nope, it won't work with this apparently.
So we're just gonna discuss some of the things that kind of the job duties, sources and flows, everything that entails the water department and what we do on a daily basis. So, next slide. This is more than ever, you know, when we're talking about water, you don't understand how important water is until, you know, we are in a drought like we are right now, so.
I interject a little something here. Okay, so I've spent over a few days, quite a bit of time over in the Public Works building, just even trying to wrap my head around the complexity of supplying water to residents. To have your taps turn on and have fresh, clean, drinkable water come out of it. And it's amazing how much we take that for granted because it's not a simple process. And we have such a fantastic team and I'm just really, really proud of them. I'm grateful beyond anything I can express for people that can do things that I have absolutely no clue how to do. And so every time you turn on your tap, please just kind of say a little note of gratitude to our wonderful water team.
So our department is made up of 6 employees. We have over 50 years of experience with all of them combined. Not to mention we have throughout Public Works, I think we have an additional 7 or 8 employees that have at some point worked in the water department. So we're very cross-trained, you know, in water throughout our whole department. Next one. So this is just highlighting all of our team. Jason is our culinary water superintendent. By far, hands down, I'm not even being biased, the best water superintendent in Utah. Like he's amazing. He understands the system like nobody else. So he's got a ton of certifications. You know, his grade 4 water conservation. He understands our water rights very well. Obviously our backflow prevention, so we don't have any kind of cross contamination. So just like I said, he's a great leader and I couldn't say enough about Jason. Next up is Ryan Carter. He's our assistant water superintendent. Jason's right-hand man. He's been with us for about 8 years. He has his water for as well, some water conservation as well. Great team leader, just a great kid. Next up is Bowen. So Bowen's been with us for about 4.5 years. He left us for a little bit. Went and did some inspections for another city, came back. So on top of his water distribution, he also has some inspection knowledge and he helps the city when we get in a pickle to help with that too. So like I said, Councilman Extra said, it's just amazing what kind of team we've got here. Next up is Brandon. Brandon's been with us for about 4 years. He's one of those guys that will get in any hole. He'll turn off water when it's spraying in his face. He'll do about anything you ask him. He likes he's probably the one that gets the dirtiest every single day. So yeah, he's a good worker. Kyle Fife has been with us for 5 years. So Kyle has been in multiple departments throughout our city. He started in stormwater, went to solid waste. He helped us with the garbage situation for a little while there, and then moved over to water. Great asset, one of the hardest workers I know. Huge for our team as well. And then last but not least is Kate. So Kate's been with us for 6 months. he actually, I think, finished his probation today, so we'll have to get that figured out. No, so he's actually has some experience coming from another water distributions. So he has his 4 as well. He's just been a great asset, you know, molded right into the team. So he's great as well. So, these are our job duties. And so we broke them into 4 different categories. We have administration, maintenance, and then we have work orders and other duties assigned. You can see we've here just put some of the things that fall under some of these, you know, categories. Administration are some of the training we need to do, reservoir checks, cross connection stuff, inspections, all of our sampling, shut off. These are all the things that are required by the state that we don't have a choice in. You know, those are the things that we have to make sure we're doing to be compliant within the state. So those are a lot of hours that we put into, you know, administration. Next is maintenance. Maintenance is the ones that, oh, you're fine, John. Some of the, you know, our hydrant repairs, our PRV repairs, meters, water leaks, those kind of things. You know, those are the ones that if we start getting behind, or, you know, and we're going to ask the council, you'll see in our presentation that we're going to ask the council for an employee in the water department because, you know, we're falling behind, you know, in hours here. This is the category that gets neglected per se, because administration, we can't, you can go on the next slide, John. Our work orders, you know, those are the things that come from the gals in the office, you know, our jumpers, our meters, our high consumptions, all of that is, you know, based off of how we get our revenue in the water, and the things that we keep everything moving forward. So we can't skip on those as well. And then other jobs, duties is assigned. You know, we've got snow plowing, a lot of cross training, safety training. And so, like I said, that's the one thing that, you know, that's where we start falling behind is in maintenance.
Just a little color as far as investing in this department. What we want to do is not ever neglect maintenance, because as maintenance gets neglected, work orders go up and costs of fixing everything then go up. So what we want to do is be, you know, not penny wise and pound foolish, but actually invest wisely and, you know, getting the stitch in time. And as, you know, Dave and his team have put together a great plan to really invest wisely so that we are making sure that we're staying ahead but it's not extravagant. It's not, you know, going overboard, but it's really thinking through how we can make sure that the time is spent wisely. And part of it is having another employee. There are many of the tasks that you'll see that require multiple people. It's like, you know, you can have a job that requires 3 people. So, and it can't be done without those 3 people. So if we don't have that extra person, then something else is being neglected. And so we have to make sure that everything is covered. So it's really, and again, as I said, this is the most basic of our life-giving, you know, quality of life things. So to me, this is kind of essential. So, you know, I think we're really wise to invest in this.
So next slide, John.
So
So these are
that was your music.
that was awesome. So these are some of the state requirements we talked about. Reservoir checks, obviously, that's 3 times a week that we have to go and check all of our reservoir sites. Make sure we're testing chlorine, making sure that we're putting the right amount of chlorine and those kind of things into our pipes. We've got weekly samples. We do 5 routine samples per week. We have to do 20 that are required by the state every single month. So we split them up, you know, weekly. They are spread out, you know, all over the city. We have annual sampling, which can sometimes be up to what, 300 or 400 samples sometimes. It just depends on what year it is. If it's lead and copper, we have to put out, you know, 80 lead and copper samples. Not to mention some of our other big ones. So it just depends on the year, but that kind of comes from the, you know, the state as well, and even the feds, you know, with the annual samples. Obviously, the guys have to keep CEUs to keep their certifications that they all have. And then at the end of the year, we have to do state reporting. We have to show that we're not losing too much water. That when, you know, the water that we're bringing in and the water that we're selling is a lot, you know, we have to make sure that those numbers are close to each other and that we're not having these huge losses inside of our system. Yeah.
Do you have any questions? Because this is complicated.
Go ahead.
I like that we have a lot of people that are cross-trained. It seems like that's really helpful, depending on the situation and workloads in different departments. Do we have a good way of tracking, you know, for example, when one of the water department employees is helping with building inspection or something else, just to know where the resources are going, so we have a good idea as to how much time they're spending on other things? Just because I think it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, so inside of Public Works, we track it internally. If it goes outside like inspections like you're asking, then he actually, he actually gets paid different, like he gets underpaid under the inspections department, so.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so we can track it that way as well.
That the yellow, the time tracking sheets
Yeah.
are there. Yeah,
Yeah.
so things are, you know, probably at your company too, is like if you're billing to a certain department or
Mhm.
billing to a certain client, the internal North Ogden departments have those too, so things get billed.
So these are just a couple pictures, just so you can see. The one on the left is us, that's our new PRV systems. If you ever get a chance, please let us know. We'd love to take you to some of these sites where these new PRVs are. They're very safe for our employees. We take them out of the road now, so they're in the park strip, so the guys can climb into them, you know, off the road. They don't have to worry about, because, you know, 90% of our PRVs are in the road, so we have to flag around them. You know, we have to worry about people climbing in and out of vaults inside the road. So we were able to take these ones and take them outside out of the road, and so they're in the park strip. They have ventilation, so there's clean air always running through them. They have pumps so that there's no water inside of them, so they're a great part of our system. That's just us checking reservoirs. Next slide. This is our water leak. These are our water leak process. So anytime we have a water leak, if you hear about a water leak, this is us, you know, they're digging down to the main. That middle picture is considered a full circle break. So that's what most of our breaks look like. They have that fan look. It's just where the pipe breaks completely in a full circle. We're able to put the clamp, you can see it up in that top right corner. We're able to put the clamp on there, bolt it down, and we repressurize the pipe at that point, so. Next slide. This is the PRV system, or the program that we started last year. We were given $100,000 last year, where we have 100 again in this budget. You can see that top one, it's just corrosion, you know, over time. You know, some of these PRVs have been put in, you know, the 70s and 80s. And so this is just us being able to go break them down, clean them, you know, put new gaskets, put new brand new, you know, valves in. And then they're actually being able to powder coat and get those painted so that we have a working system. This is one of those ones that are very important because, you know, like Councilman Ekstrom said, it's if we can keep these safe and, you know, where they're running properly, it prevents leaks and those kind of things. And a leak for us can, you know, be up to $10,000. And if we break one of these down and fix it, you know, it saves us a lot of time and money, so.
And I had to ask you 3 times, what does PRV stand for again? It is pressure release valve. So there's my expertise. That's my little gee whiz. I now know what that means.
Next slide. This is just us repairing hydrants. Sometimes you can repair the hydrant, sometimes you have to replace the whole valve or the whole hydrant itself. Next slide. Same concept here. Sometimes you can replace the bolts and you know, everything in the valve and it'll be okay. And sometimes you have to go and completely cut out the valve and replace it. Next slide. This is our service line. So these are the services. This is what goes from our main into each house. They're either in copper or in poly now. And that's just us either repairing one or installing one.
Shows that boys still like to play in the mud.
Yes. This is our metering system. You can see in that middle picture, that black plate on top of the meter lid. That's our radio. Our radios get sent up to Rice Creek is where we bring in all of our signals from there. We have, repeaters throughout the whole city that collect, and then they send them up there as well. That's how we read all of our meters. We don't have to drive by. We don't have to go physically read meters. All the meters go up to there.
Within 1/10 of the gallon accuracy, which I think is pretty awesome.
So this is just breaking down those, the maintenance admin, the work orders and the other. This shows that we're about 2,000 hours over, with all these job duties, we're about we're negative 2,000 hours. So that's made up in either overtime or, like I said, we have to neglect something and it's always maintenance. And so in a perfect world, we'd be at that 1450 or 14,500. If we brought another guy in, that would put us there. So we just thought this would be a cool thing for you guys to see. We produced 614 million gallons of water last year.
Say that again?
614 million gallons of water. So Rice Creek is our biggest producer at 250 million gallons, and that's our spring. And that's actually down. So that's last year's totals. It's down about 30% from the best year we had, which is in 2017. That's our next slide. You can see it. And so this is comparing our best year and our worst year in the last 10 years. The light blue is 2021. So you can see where Rice Creek was at that 200 and whatever it is there. And our best year in 2017 was almost 400 million gallons. In 17, we produced 88% of our water that went into our system was from springs. Springs are so much better for our system, not for quality of water or any of those issues, but just because it's all gravity fed. It's all from the mountain. So we're actually able to put it into our system, gravity feed it down. It saves us a ton of energy. Power for pumping go way down. It's a lot less chlorine that we have to, inject, because we're only injecting it at a few sites compared to, when we're doing it down, when in 2021, we were basically running all of our sites just to keep up. So, and you can see that at well 2 right there that, in 2017, that's flipped. That should be the wrong way. Sorry. No, that is right. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. So yes. So yeah, sorry. In 2021, we used it way more than you can see than when we used it in 2017. And that's just because we have to keep up with demand. And so when we have to keep up with demand in a drought season like we are in right now, we have to lean to our wells and go from there. So our springs were down about 30% from that 17 year to this 2021 year.
How many gallons were produced in 17?
In 17, it was, we could go back, John, it was, so we did 614 there, and I think we did 580-ish. Because we've produced, since 17, we've produced about 15% more water. That's just because we have more connections and other things, but yeah.
One of the issues that we see is a lot of our population growth, a lot of our development is coming down in the valley where it's serviced more by the well. So that's one of the capital projects that we're hoping to do, is another well that will service all of those residents as they come in.
Next slide, Joe. So this is actually talking about those zones right now. Yeah, so this is perfect. It kind of just goes right into it. You can take the next. So that's just all of our different zones from all of our different sources.
So if you can't see, that you've
We'll-
broken it
we'll go
down,
right
right?
to it.
Thank you.
So the first one is Rice Creek, and you can see that it spans over our whole city. So you can picture that that's where it mostly feeds. But when we have really, really good springs from our, from Rice Creek, we can actually keep on feeding it down, right? We can feed into those other zones because it's just gravity fed down. So, you know, at that point, you can really feed Rice Creek. Almost our whole city can be fed by Rice Creek except for above, what, 3,700? Right around there. Yeah. So Rice Creek is very important. North Ogden Canyon and Coldwater, which is our next, you can go on that next slide too. They feed about the same part of the town. It's just down Mountain Road and then up around between 3,100 and 3,500, that area right there. Well One feeds the old part of town, Fruitland Drive, that area. Next one. So this is the one that we want you guys to see. And this is Well Two. Well Two feeds a major part of our city from basically 2,600 all the way down. So you're talking all of our commercial, we have 2 car washes in that zone. Most of our density is all in that zone. And so when we ask about developing another well, that's why we want to develop another one in this zone, because we want to have that ability to be able to pump multiple wells in this zone, because it does cover a big portion of our city. Lakeview Heights, Well 3. Well 3 is located on the flats down here, actually, but we actually pump it all the way up to the cove and to that areas of our town. So that one has to actually be pumped multiple times. It gets pumped from here on the flats up to nearby Frog Rock, and then from there up to Northview, from Northview all the way up to the cove. So it gets pumped quite a bit just to feed those people with water. And that's reflected in their bills as well, just so you guys all know. I don't know if you guys know that they actually have a pumping fee that's structured for that area. These are just pictures of our sites, just to give you an idea of what they look like. And, you know, what these are the reservoirs that they have to check every, 3 times a week, like I said. Next one. This is Fruitland Drive Booster. This is another project that we are asking, in the budget that we really need to address. So Fruitland Drive Booster gives us the ability, just like I was just telling about Well 3, we can pump everything on the west side of town, from the flats up to Frog Rock, from Frog Rock to Northview up to Cove. But we don't have that ability right now to do it on the east side of town, and that's because of what shape this Fruitland Drive Booster is in. You can see that, so that's located at 2,100 in Fruitland. I don't know if you ever knew this, but there's these huge vaults under the road that have 480 volts of power and these huge motors to pump water. They're supposed to pump them from Randall's Reservoir in that area, and then be able to pump them up to the reservoir at 1050, so that we can pump that up to Rice Creek. We can basically gravity feed from Rice Creek like we talked about. And so that would just give us the ability to be able to pump on either side of our city, move water around the way that we need to. And so that's what we're asking here, is that we get these out of the ground, that we purchase some property, and that we take this vault, take it out of the ground like it should be. We should have never had it. You can see the corrosion around the PRV there. I mean, around the pumps there, and I think the next picture even shows even more. See, so that panel, like I said, has 480 volts. It runs through these motors. You can see how bad a shape that stuff's in. So that is something that we definitely need to upgrade. This is just our reservoir totals. So you can see that we have, 2 500,000 gallon tanks, or
or 3 half-million-gallon tanks, 2 million-gallon tanks, and then we have 2, this is a picture of Rice Creek, actually. So we have 2 1 million-gallon tanks there at Rice Creek. This is just talking about how our city is set up, 98% of our city is residential. We have 88 or 82 connections in commercial, and then the institutional is our schools and our churches.
Every once in a while, the word is there.
And so this is future connections, and the reason we wanted to put this on is, again, to reiterate that needing a well down on that zone, or that zone 1, where well 2 is. Those first 3 are all multifamily, and they're all in that same zone. They're down in that, in well 2, zone 1. So you can see that there's a real need for putting another well down there, as well as why we're gonna put that that 2 million-gallon reservoir as well, so that we can have the storage for this area. So I think that's everything, right? On that one. So thank you again. I really appreciate you guys letting us highlight the water department and kind of giving you some insight on what they do and how important they are to our city. So any questions before we get to the budget part? Okay. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. So the budget goes right into the water department. You want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go on.
So the, like we said, we're asking for an employee, because of that lack of hours, the manpower that we need in the water department. A storage tank, that's the Randall's Reservoir I was talking about. We're gonna upgrade to a 2 million-gallon tank there from a 500,000 gallons. So it's gonna give us a lot of storage capacity in that lower zone, which will give us a lot of fire protection and everything that we need to grow out that area down there. Well development. So that is, we've drilled 2 wells. We have one at the top of 1050. That one's marked Mountain Road in 1050. And then the other one is up North Ogden Canyon. We've drilled both of those. We have casings in those so that we can actually go and develop those ones so that we can start producing that water. The Fruitland Drive booster, again, talking about the booster, just and the needs that we need there. Future well 1, continuing that PRV maintenance that we showed you. And then our replacement projects. We have replacement projects throughout the city. There's 30, 50, 1700, 750, just some areas that we've had multiple breaks on that just are ready to be replaced now. So the 2.4 million in ARPA funds that the city received, we're gonna push all of that into the water department and the water projects. And then just a few things that I wanted to put at the back of your minds, just is long-term. About 5 years ago, we ran into a situation with meters where I think there was a lot of shock, like, hey, we need to replace all these meters, and there was, some discussion there. And so we just wanted to make sure that that never happens again, that we're always, talking to the council about some of these long-term planning, and that's one of them.
So maybe you wanted a discussion about the unfunded depreciation. There you go.
It will now become funded,
Yes.
so we don't have to dig up the money
Exactly.
that emergency needs.
SCADA is another big one. So SCADA is all of our whole system is ran on SCADA, right? So they can turn on pumps, turn off pumps, they can turn on wells and turn off wells. We can check the levels of all of our reservoirs. And so it's just all of this telemetry. And so what we want to do is just make everybody aware that, we're with a very small company in that situation, and at any time they could either sell that company or whatever. And we just want to be ready to
Got to transition to
Transition. Yes.
another system.
Yeah.
Because this is like 3 guys in their 70s.
Yeah.
So we need to be kind of shopping ahead for how we're gonna do the monitoring, so that we're not like, oh, we don't want to be caught off guard.
And then it's just a dump truck.
long-term is something else we need to look at. Our dump truck in that water department is almost 20 years old, so we just gotta start thinking about that. Again, just pictures of, that's the water, the PRVs, PRVs there, thanks. Next up is stormwater. So the big one in this one is obviously the pond project. Still waiting on some stuff with the feds, but it is programmed in this budget or this coming up budget year. And then the next slide talks about, the next.
Which is the next part of it.
Yes, sorry. The next part is the street sweeper and the drying pad. The more we've looked into that, we really thought we were gonna go with the street sweeper. We can do a drying pad for a really good price at our old shop. So that's the way we're looking at transitioning.
Okay, I just wanted to explain, because he had to explain this to me. So when we pick up debris and, you know, throughout the city, we're not allowed to just like put it up at the green waste unless it's been dried out first. And this is a state regulation, correct? And so it either has to be dumped down at the transfer station, which of course takes resources, manpower, and fees, dumping fees, in order to take it down there. So if we put in this drying pad, then it dries out for a couple of days and then we can take it up to the green waste pit. And so it's kind of an offset cost. It's gonna cost something to put the drying pad in, but it will save us, you know, we don't know numbers exactly yet, but it should offset pretty significantly in the favor of keeping it in the city and not having to do it. There's actually building one also. And theirs is closer to being done, correct?
Yeah, so theirs is a lot closer to being done, and theirs is a lot bigger than what we're looking at doing. Ours is more for just that, the sweeper and things that we have to take away from, you know, the state regulations. Where theirs is gonna be offered for a lot of other reasons, you know, water leaks, other things like that. I think UDOT's even getting involved in helping that, so theirs is gonna be a lot bigger.
And until ours is done, we can use theirs on a per use fee. So it's like, it's kind of the way we're going. At first, they kind of ran the numbers and thought the street sweeper would be better, but on closer examination, it looks like the drying pad is a better option.
That's stormwater, sewer. So, sorry, I should go back. Water and stormwater, neither one of them are any increases to utility rates. So this will be the first one that would have any kind of increase. And this is just a pass through. It's from Central Weaver. Their rates have went up about $66,000, which correlates to about 80 cents per month for our residents. This is one that we definitely want to have a conversation about lining. So there's the lining project, you can see there right there on the left. We're one of the only cities in the county that do the lining, as much lining as we do, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to. And we've wanted to have a discussion with the council, you know, and explain to you guys, you know, what benefits we find in doing that. But there is nothing coming from Central Weaver for doing this, basically. You know, our rates aren't coming down, they're not participating in us doing lining, even though all of that is saving them. And so that's just a discussion, you know, me and Mayor have had a few times. Did you have something, Mayor?
Yeah, I guess my thought was this. First of all, I have a question. I thought that our increase from Central Weaver was like a couple $100,000, John.
It's actually 140,000.
Yeah, 140. What's the 66?
So the calculation for fiscal year 22, which is the year that we're in now, was actually overestimated 70,000. And so this is the difference of that. So instead of the first initial cost increase of $1.70 to cover that 140, we're looking at 80 since we've already done it in 22.
Okay, so the increase is 140,000, but because we have excess charges right now, we're netting it down to the 66.
And the big thing is Central Weaver is now gonna go on a fiscal year like us.
Right.
Before they were on a calendar, so it was a lot of guessing game. And so.
Yeah, it won't be guessing anymore.
Yes.
It'll just be increases. If we could go back, I think the council needs to understand the numbers here. We talk about, you go this way, John, forward. For instance, when we talk about stormwater, we talk about the pond project. I know we had our initial estimates. I don't know if we believe there's been substantial inflation in that, but I think the council needs to know, I think particularly Councilmember Dalpas, who's new here, what commitment we've made there number wise.
So that's $3.1 million.
But out of pocket, we're expecting grants because I don't think we'd ever proceed and spend $3.1 million of our own money doing this.
No, that's a lot of it's grants.
But I think the council needs to kind of understand the numbers behind these requests and budgets. So maybe at a future meeting, we could maybe address those issues. Because I think, John, and just some background, I'm going to ask you this, not to pick on enterprise funds, but I think the council probably would be interested to know, what our increase has been in benefits and wages over the last couple of years, so that they can get a perception of what we're talking about here when we make increases, because sometimes we make one increase here and one increase there, but we never see the aggregate number there. So, John, I think you and I had a conversation about that earlier.
Yeah, so I do have the last 2 years' numbers, and I didn't break it apart by each individual enterprise fund.
No, but just total in the city.
For general fund, salaries and benefits have gone from 6.4 million to just over 7 million. And then in the enterprise funds, it's gone from about 1.2 to about 1.3 million with the budget year from last year to this year, or I guess next year.
So about 750,000, did you calculate that right?
Yes.
But I'd be interested to see, because if we have a commitment here on the pond park, do we believe that that's still within what we talked about originally? Because that's been, what, 2.5 years?
Yeah, I think everyone anticipates it will be going up.
And will the grant be going up, or are we going to be expected? I think these are the things we need to know.
So the way the grant is written for storm, it should be covered 100% by the grant. The secondary water is covered at 75%, which is the Pine View portion, and then the park improvements would be 50%. So that's going to be the biggest cost, or in some ways, probably the biggest reduction in the project is the amount of money spent on the park portion, since it's a heavier load for the city.
Refresh my memory, but did we estimate about 300,000 out of pocket on the storm and about 900?
Correct. Yes.
Do we believe that that's still within the realm of what we've seen?
I think I would probably anticipate the storm projects. A lot of it depends on what the federal grant approvers say qualifies as the storm project. But it would probably, I would guess, based on what we've been seeing in the construction industry, probably be closer to $450,000 or $500,000, just because of just the way concrete pipe is increased, and most of those are concrete pipe related type things. And excavation costs are extremely expensive as well, because labor is hard to find and equipment is, and so I think every single one of those things will be inflating upwards. So yeah.
Okay.
So again, talking about the lining projects, it's just a matter of, and we can, I can give you those numbers. It's $350,000 every year that we put into lining our pipes. I think there are some major benefits in that
that, you know, we don't have any, you know, when we do these lining projects, we don't have any seams, which in turn means that we're not having roots come through, you know, anywhere in our pipes, which doesn't cause backups and those kind of things. Because it's non-invasive, you know, they're able to go in there and put the lining through the pipe. We don't have to dig anything up. The cost comparison, to give you a good cost comparison, we had to do a 5-foot section about 4 months ago, and it cost us about $10,000 to do 5 feet because the sewer is the deepest one in all of our city. You know, the trenching to get it down to the sewer, to do a repair on the sewer, it can get very costly to just do a 5-foot repair. Where, you know, when we do these, the lining project, it's more about, it's between $30 and $40 a foot to do the lining. And so there's some really good things about doing the lining, continuing to do the lining. But like we've talked about, the cons are, you know, we're not seeing any benefit from Central Weaver by not giving them a bunch of, you know, stormwater infiltration and those different things, you know, on our bill or with help by putting lining in. So it's one of those things that we just have to look at.
This is a preventive measure. It also helps with, if we have natural disasters, if we have an earthquake, it's reinforcement. So it keeps our sewer working, our lines going when others might not. And they've got a plan, you know, the replacement is not like we're going to do all of them at once, but they've got them prioritized. So the most vulnerable and the oldest are, you know, done first. So it's kind of like, how much money do we have? That's how much we'll do. So it's not like we're, you know, we're trying to use the funds really wisely, making sure that the most important, most urgent sections are addressed first.
Don't we have most of the older section done?
We do. We've got a lot of the older section done. And so now you're starting to work on, but you still have concrete pipe in the ground. And so concrete pipe does have those joints and those and different things, but the concrete pipe that we do have in the ground now is definitely in better shape than, you know, because we've been doing this for 10 years now, or 11 years now. So.
Right. So the question I had is the cost benefit. You know, we're spending $325,000. I think we spent $32,000 on clean out, as I recall. And you're right, we don't get any credit. But I'm curious because, you know, our pipes are all relined. We're one of the few in the area. So ours would still work, but when the Central Weaver, where it connects into there breaks down, where's all this crap going?
Yeah, where it breaks down.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know the benefit, you know, and I don't see it like you do.
It will be elsewhere.
You know, it's nice to have pipes in the ground after an earthquake, but I don't know where it's gonna go if it gets that bad. So I'm just, you know, that's the question I asked is what's the benefit, identifiable benefit of this? And, you know, we surely want to have maintenance, but my understanding is we've got most of the major old lines relined. We got a lot of the stuff that's new. So what are we talking about relining here, I guess, is what I'd like to.
It's all concrete pipe. I think eventually you have to line all concrete pipe. We know it's still a process. If you go to the next slide, it shows, I think it gives a good idea. The one on the left, I wish you could see it a little bit better, but that's all the ones we've done for the last 11 years. The ones on the right are still the ones that need to be done. You can see that there's parts of town that are not very old at all, but there are still some parts of, you know, Cameron Cove is a good example that it is older, but the concrete pipe is in still pretty good shape. So that's why it hasn't been hit yet. But that's kind of where we're at, is that, you know, you're a little more than halfway with doing all the concrete pipe.
What other cities are relining right now, Dave?
I know you have South Ogden, there's Do you know?
Ogden City.
Ogden City does, right?
I think Pleasant View was looking at it in Harrisville, but I'm not sure if
I
they
don't
ever
know if
decided.
they have either, so. I know South Ogden does, Ogden City does. I know there's a couple in Davis County, so. yeah.
Mayor.
Councilmember Swanson.
I think one of the questions the mayor's getting at and that I have on my mind is at, a third of $1 million a year in relining. Is that a wise expenditure? We outlined a number of things. Is it a wise expenditure in comparison to the number of cleanouts or dig and repair that we would encounter if we weren't? And so far from what I've heard is that the amount that we would be spending in cleanouts and potential digs and repairs is far less than what we are spending on relining for essentially, in the grand scheme of things, not a lot of benefit.
The only reason I say that's unfair is just because we have lined, so those.
No, I'm just talking about moving forward.
Yeah,
Moving forward, when
I just
we
think-
look at it,
I think you start falling behind, if we start falling behind and we start getting tons of roots, then at that point you would see a bunch of backups and replacement projects that we have to do. And so I think it's hard to tell you, yes, you're right, because right now you are right. I mean, the last 3 years we've had maybe 5 backups with maybe 2 that we've had to pay, and 4 repairs. But I think it's because we were proactive and doing the lighting, for the last 10 years and taking care of these, because, and I would like to, invite anybody that comes out, before we go do the lighting, they go out and TV all those pipes. And you can see how cracked and beat up some of these pipes that we're actually lining and putting that lining in. So it's hard to quantify and tell you, I don't know what that number would be if we weren't lighting.
Well, you think about it too, concrete breaks down more over time, roots grow more over time. And so it's a vulnerability issue. It's like we've got things, it's like, okay, we could not. And then it's like, but then we're kind of running an actuarial risk of like, okay, how much do we really want to risk? Especially in our current situation where we can see how expensive is concrete piping. If we actually have it, complete failure,
Yeah.
then we're talking really a lot of money and a lot of backup. So it's kind of like, do we do that investment? And I guess that's just a philosophical thing. I'm like to have things that's like, okay, I know I've done something preventive, so that and you can't predict. I mean, it can happen anytime, but have we made our best effort to really prevent a sewer catastrophe? So that's what we're looking at, and it's a kind of a philosophical discussion we can have as far as where do we spend money.
Mayor, can I speak?
Yeah, I've got to get in the middle here. I feel like I'm down here at the end. So Susan, if you wouldn't mind putting me in the middle going forward, that'd be good. Are you down there? Councilmember Del Pass? Okay.
If we continue the lining at the rate that we are right now, I'm guessing that there's a point where we're 100% complete. And is there a stage where we have 10, 20, 30 years where we don't have to worry about lining? Or do we finish all of the lining and then it just keeps going on and on because we have to replace the lining at some point? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and there will be, because, I mean, like I said, we're halfway, we're 11 years into this. So say it takes us another 10 or 15 at the very most. This lining that they put in has a 90-year life in it. So, I mean, there would be a big gap where we wouldn't have to line. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, perfect.
On the streets?
Move on to streets. Streets department, Class C road funds, it's obviously, one of the projects we'll do. We have $400,000 in Class C road funds that we can put down on the roads. Like Mayor said, there's a lot of things that have gone up and oil is one of them. So, we will get as fair, as much as we can get done with that $400,000. Casey, has put a very good plan together on how, where are our needs and where, how we can fix those kind of things. Sidewalk, we have $70,000 in sidewalk, projects. Again, concrete has went way up, so we will get as many repairs and things like that.
So this is kind of a pet idea of mine, just because my kids go to North Ogden Elementary where there are a few sidewalks. JD's kids are among them that have to walk along the road right in front of, it's 2650, that there is not sidewalk, and we have kids and moms pushing strollers in the streets. And so I really want to, and the streets, they have started mapping it out. We're kind of doing a prioritized map of, especially in school safe zones, that we have sidewalk on public streets, especially in walking paths to schools, starting with elementary schools and then junior high. North Ogden Junior High is terrible. It's walking in the middle of the street constantly. So that we have them at least on one side of the street. We're running into problems with right of way, especially in that section of the city that for some reason the city gave away the right of way like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're having to look at, okay, how can we get the property, putting them in, maybe even part of the shoulder and putting a curb, so that there are ways, they're coming up with some really creative ways to get safe walking zones, especially around there. So the other avenue of funding that we're looking for is, this is a priority and for a lot of different philanthropic organizations that want to fund these kind of things. And so we're looking at other sources of funding to find grants and so forth, just to get some sidewalks for our kids. And I also think that it's a worthwhile investment for our city funds to go as well.
Next slide.
And the message
Oh, the
board,
message
gotta tell us about the message
Yes.
board, because it's awesome.
Yes, so the message board is just one of those things that, in the last year and a half, we've rented multiple times to where, we've really found that it's time for us to go and purchase one. I think it can be used for a lot of different, reasons, but it's one of those things in the street department that would be very useful.
Council Swanson, going to sidewalks, are we considering a special service district to pay for those?
That's something we brought up. We looked at, Charlotte has said, or Councilman Ekstrom has said that, the width of the roads, now with some of our LID standards, we have some wide roads that we can actually look at, doing a curbing and doing the sidewalk connected to the road there. So we've looked at, different options, and Casey's really worked hard at trying to get an idea of, how are we gonna fund this and what's the best way to fund it? Is it taking that approach? Is it exactly what you said, just putting a service district in and funding it that way? So it's just a matter of, I guess, how we want to go forward. And we actually have a map that shows, so this is all the road projects. I wish those would have showed up a little better, but this is all the road projects we've done over the last, several years, in different colors. And I'll make sure I get these out to the council as well, so that you can see that a little closer. And we'll get that posted on the website. And then the next one is, I think it showed up a lot better. So in the red is everywhere that there is no sidewalk on either side of the road. So you can see most of it's in the old part of town. So, you got the old part of town, you've got 2750, Mountain Road and Fruitland, obviously. You got parts of 1700 and 2100 that are big parts, and then there's some area above the cemetery there. So those are the ones that we really want to key on, and especially in the old part of town, because you got the junior high and the elementary right there. That there's a lot of kids that walk on the road there that we need to probably address as quickly as we can.
So one of the things that we're looking at too, a lot of times when you want to go to someone for money, they want to have your plan. So what we're trying to get right now is the plan. It's like, okay, this is our strategic kind of timeline about where we want to put, why we want them put, how they're going to go in. Do we need to buy land? Do we need to buy right of way? What do we need to get? So when we have all of that put together, then we can say, okay, now we need funding. So it's kind of this, we're in the back of our minds is always like funding. But, when we have a plan, we're more likely to get funds if we have, the more details we have for that.
So the next is fleet. The fleet department we've got the truck exchange program that goes through the fleet. Still going very well. That's where we trade out a truck. After 1 year, they purchased the truck back for the exact same price that we purchased it from Young's. And, this year's, well, because of the used market, it's probably the best year we've ever had. We've actually brought back, they actually gave us a year, we actually made money kind of in that situation this year. So the program's going great still. It's working really well with the dealer. So in the fleet, there's the parks mowers, there's 2 mowers that we'll exchange there, like we've done over the last few years. There's a snowplow truck still in the budget there. And there's a trailer to haul one of our mini X's, and then there's the floor cleaner. That was when we did our walkthrough with OSHA. Sorry, thank you. When we did a walkthrough with OSHA, and that was one of the things that they brought up is, what kind of cleaner or device do we have to be able to clean up some of the oil spills and those kind of things. And a lot of that is just done by hand right now. And so that was one of the things that was recommended that we look into, not only at the shops, but, in all of the departments.
So Dave, how does this fit into our goal of having our capital expenditures not exceed 90% of our depreciation? I guess I don't know. Maybe you do, Councilmember Ekstrom. What is the requested capital expenditure budget here? And does it fit into the 90% of depreciation? Because I think that's the threshold the council set. I think they need to know that, what we're talking about here.
So one of the things that we really have put it more on the prioritization into the department. So it's kind of like the council is going to determine how much money they're going to give to the department. The department is going to take that money and say, these are the most important things to do. And so
that's fine, but if this is $3 million and 90% depreciation is $1.5 million,
right,
prioritization is not really going to matter that much.
Certainly.
And I guess I don't have an idea what this number is here versus 90% of
So John, you can pull it
depreciation.
up, but I believe the motor pool budget is around 600,000. Do you have a budget?
This sheet,
Yes, let me go to the red tab. Yeah. So down to expenditures. Yeah, so it's right around 600,000. Your depreciation is let's say 100.
100,000.
Yeah.
and capital is 48.5.
Capital is 48, and then our leases.
So does that answer your question? Maybe just if you wanted actual numbers.
Yeah, I think it's important to see the numbers.
For sure.
Here.
So the motor pool is, and you'll see this in the Parks Department and then also the Police Department. So this particular motor pool does support three different, actually it supports all of the funds, but it supports three of it into the general fund as well.
But in essence, you have because there's no such thing as an operating lease anymore. So when you have equipment leases of 110,000, if we're spending $250,000 on a snowplow, that's really a capital expenditure. You can call it a lease all you'd like to call it, but it's still cash out the door.
Right.
Our goal is to accumulate cash so we don't end up, as you know, having the issue we're facing right now with unfunded depreciation.
Do we have any other questions?
No, okay.
I assume you're going on to solid waste here pretty soon.
Yes, that's the one we saved for last. So, you can see solid waste. This is the one that we need to talk about if we want to have any increases, right? So, our hauling company, Republic, their increase, the way our contract is written, is 2 to 4%, or approximately $33,000. So we can use the fund balance for that, or we can pass that on to the citizens. So you're looking at approximately 40 cents, right? Weaver County has increased their tipping fees by $3.65 a ton, taking it up to $44 a ton. And so that increase, just based off of how much tonnage we took to them last year, is approximately $32,000. Again, about 40 cents if we would pass that on to our citizens. A can increase, this is just to give you guys, or to show you how much we've seen cans increase. Just in the last 15 months, they've increased from $88 to about $125 for a can. That's each can.
And the
So-
lead time of,
And the lead time of, what are we looking?
8 as far as ordering.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's 8 to 12 weeks.
to get a can. So Brian's been buying them ahead of and in bulk so that we can have them when we get new houses sign up that they have new cans. And so that price is actually passed on to the new homeowner when they purchase the home. So another topic that we need to have a discussion about, and I just want to bring to every year so that we have that topic, is burner chip. To give you an idea, to do those to do a pile in the spring and to do one in the fall chipping, we're looking between $50,000 and $70,000.
Each time or?
No, total.
Okay.
So, so that gives us, we looked it up today. We sold about 2,600 passes last year, roughly about 2,600 passes. That's single passes, right? So you would be looking at, if you pass that on to the pass holder instead of, you wouldn't pass it on to everybody. You try to pass it on to those pass holders. You're looking between $20 and $25 per pass. Where right now we're at $2.50. So, again, that's just a discussion that we need to have.
Councilmember Swanson.
$20 to $25 per visit?
Yeah.
Okay, if we chip
Yeah.
and passed it just to pass holders.
Yeah, and like I said, it was just, that's how many passes we sold last year, was about 2,600, from what me and Stacy can figure out.
and that's assuming that people would buy them at the same rate,
Yeah.
which they probably would not. In which case they're going to be throwing a lot of their debris that they would normally take to the green waste into
Well,
the
and
garbage.
There's the other question, or at least the other philosophical discussion with that, is that not burning benefits every individual in the city because it doesn't plug our little valley here with smoke. And so do we pass it on to everyone? You know, just a philosophical, now the fire marshal will correct me.
Councilmember Barker, you have a comment?
So the other philosophical question, I get all the burn permits. Pleasant View last year got almost twice as many burn permits as North Ogden because our residents are now taking them here. If we no longer do burning or chipping here, you will see the increase go up for people now from burning their house. And so, in my opinion, this is actually a lot safer. Well, not, it's a better burn than if every resident burns in their own home or in their yard. Because we're doing a bigger, cleaner burn and it's over and done within a couple days compared to 2 months of smoke.
Yes, this was interesting. This was something that you had explained to me, and Ryan, I'm sure you understand the mechanics of it. When you have a great big fire, it burns hotter. And then you have less smoke, but you have little burns. You're actually creating a lot more smoke. The other thing about having the big burns at the Green Waste Pit is that it's dried out, the drying pattern issue. So then, you know, we're not drying wet leaves in our own yards and things like that, that people will generally do because they don't understand, you know, they just want to burn it off. So, you know, it's, you know, I understand why we would want to do the chipping, but I don't know that we're going to see the benefit if we start passing on the costs. And it's kind of, it's an education kind of thing. We're gonna have to tell people that complain about the smoke, and it's like, yeah, I know, but weigh one or the other.
And I would say that, you know, most of the time, you know, 80% of our complaints with the smoke is actually when we're putting it out. It's, you know, the 2 days that we're burning, they don't even, sometimes don't even realize that we're burning. Like they said, because we're burning so hot, it's when we're actually putting it out that you start having people ask about it. Next slide. Another one that I told you I'd bring to you is the recycling, non-recycling conversation. So these are just 3 months that we pick, you know, we pick the first 3 months of the year. Just to give you an idea, the $44 is what the new tipping fee is. So you can see that, you know, that's kind of where we line up. So on top, that $43,000 is what goes to Republic. The $25,000, you know, for January is the tipping fees. So for a month, it's $69,000 in garbage haul. That's just garbage. If we did that, if we do exactly what we're doing now. John, if you go to the next slide. If we go back to recycling, now you're bringing in the recycling company that you have to haul to. And not to mention, you have to bring, and then another truck, right? And so their fees go up. We're actually taking it to another recycling plant. So you're seeing an increase of, you know, anywhere from $16,000 to $17,000 per month, which is about $200,000 more for recycling, or $2.50 to our citizens.
A month?
A month, yes.
And this is a decision that we need to think about right away, because if we want to start at the earliest they could do it is 2023,
Yes.
but they need to order the truck now.
So they're in the same situation as everybody else. So even if we say, hey, we're gonna go back to recycling, July of 23 is when we can start.
If we do decide to do it, it does give us a year to really educate people of going back to recycling and getting their habits of putting their recyclables back in the blue can, as opposed to, you know, having garbage. So that's just something we can consider and think about.
So those are all the different options of increases that we can either use fund balance for or pass on to our citizens. In my opinion, I really feel like we do need to pass on the Weber County. That's just something that was a fee, just like Central Weber did, that I feel like they increased their tipping fees, and I think that's one that we definitely probably need to pass on. So that's a 40-cent increase. And then from there, I think we can just have a discussion if we want to pass on anything else or if we want to use fund balance.
Any questions? I tend to agree that the fee that's coming from Weber County should probably be passed on. So just summarize that, Dave, the 4 enterprise funds, so the citizens are clear on that.
So if we just do just the Weber County, sorry, if we just do just the Weber County one for solid waste, that's 40 cents. And then it would be sewer for 80 cents. So you're talking $1.20.
Increase in the utility bill.
Yes. If we add the recycle, then you're adding another dollar, $2.50. But we wouldn't even start that until the following budget year, so.
Okay, what questions do you have for Dave? I think it would be good to actually see the budget numbers before we make any decisions or approvals, just so we know, I believe, and John refreshed my memory, the council last time reduced the amount allocated to departments by, I think, 500,000.
You're talking for the capital transfer?
Yes, the amount of money that would be available to go out to departments was reduced by 500,000.
Correct.
I guess I'm a little bit lost on it, if these budgets fit into that. Overall amount of funds that this council member Ekstrom said would be allocated out to each department. Where do we make the connection on that?
So on the enterprise funds, they don't contribute to the same capital. And
Right.
So that's why the presentation's focused on the additional cost to citizens for the different things, because we didn't have a goal for capital on those.
But we have streets, we're gonna be talking about HR, we're gonna be talking about recorder. Talked earlier about the finance department. I guess, I don't know if these numbers that are being submitted, if we've gone out, I think we instructed finance to send that out, the reduced amount that would be available. And
So, all the departments should have their numbers. I can't speak to streets or whatnot. I think that you needed to reduce it a little bit. Streets, and then all the enterprise funds standalone, so
yeah,
they're not part of that 500.
I do understand that, but we're not seeing in the presentations if the total numbers are fitting into what the council authorized. And I understand how enterprise funds work. They're kind of like,
Yeah, the
just
enterprise
regular
funds were
business.
presented, weren't part of that presentation of the list that was given to you.
right, because they're self-supporting. But we've talked about finance, we're gonna be talking about some administrative functions tonight. So how does this council make the connection if the numbers are talking about fits into the reduction?
We'll just have to bring back numbers.
That would be good. That would be good. Councilman Swanson, did you have a question?
Just a question that I wrote down a little bit earlier was exactly that. And does what you're presenting and the priorities that you've shown here fit within the allocation that you've been given? Or are you asking for additional funds? I mean, for me, that's the simplest question. If it fits within the allocation, great, go forth and do. If you're asking for additional funds, we need to know what those funds are and how much you're asking for.
And the enterprise funds, they all do except for the $1.20, right?
Right.
And then our streets and our fleet, our fleet's right there, and our streets we have to make some adjustments. And it's more just, hey, do we use Class C to pay for this thing? And now we're not getting to do as many roads, or are we going to cut this completely so that we can do more roads, I guess.
So right now, it looks like everything's fitting within the allocation.
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Councilman Barker?
Since it got brought up, I don't know if we have to make this decision tonight. I talked to you about our green waste. Pleasant View's been asking if they can have their residents bring their stuff here and sell punches to them. And I talked to Dave and said, well, we're gonna be taking our street waste to them for their decant facility. So is it something we want to address, that maybe open up our green waste to Pleasant View residents?
$25.
Careful, they're charging us to take our stuff.
I guess I haven't seen an official request yet, Councilman Barker, to consider and what the exchange would be, what the agreements are on the hall, but yeah, I think we're fair and take a look at it.
Again, going back to the burning, it would be better for the air if we do one big burn instead of a lot of little ones.
Good point. Councilman Swanson.
I think we should also ask our residents if they're willing to pay for the recycling. If they're okay with an additional $2.52, probably closer to $3 by the time it rolls around next year, then we institute it.
Yes,
If they want to pay for it, then let's do it.
self-supporting.
Absolutely. So how do we get that word out, that question out?
We have the ability to put it out on our website, I think on Facebook, and Katie kind of handles that. Did you have a comment, Katie?
Yeah, I can put a survey together if you like. We can send that out.
Yeah, now that we know the approximate cost and when we can implement it. I guess the other question that I still have that brought this up before is recycling really being recycled? Or are we just fooling ourselves?
And that's the biggest question, I think, is how much of what we take to the recycling plant is either being contaminated and we're having to take it to the dump anyways, or if we, or what's being recycled. And so, and that's something that we can dig into more too.
Even on the clean stuff, is it really being recycled somewhere? Or is it being dumped in the ocean someplace for plastic? And that was our concern before, as we found out that the amount that was being recycled from two aspects was, was it dirty and had to go to the dump, or when it was clean, what was actually being recycled? Do we have any information update on that at all?
We need a Rod Decker investigative report.
I think he's dead.
I know.
I think it's some new guy now. He's
The
not
other thing
dead.
is like the recycle is a lot more volatile as far as the charges go. They fluctuate pretty widely and often.
Yes, so like we said, the Weaver County fees are now $44. We put $60 to the recycling company. In talks with Ogden City has went back to recycling. They've seen that number fluctuate from all the way down to that 44 number that was fairly close. They've also seen it as high as $90. It's kind of on a market rate, and so it's one of those things. It's just, we're not going to know where it's going to land because they're not like signing a long-term contract. They're basically saying, hey, we're going to do it as a market rate. So it'll fluctuate from month to month.
So maybe before we send that survey out, we calculate what the cost would be at $90, the high that we've seen, and kind of where it is at the 40, and take an average in between the two. And when it's lower, we're putting money aside to pay for when it's higher, and we don't have to change the cost. Just a thought.
And that's kind of why I landed at 60, but yeah. Because I think it ranged from like $3.13 to our citizens down to like $2.25. And so that's kind of where we're at. But we can definitely do that or show you.
Dave, I believe you inquired recently of Ogden,
Yeah,
who has a recycling program. What did they have to say?
it was just that it's viable. Like there's just not a lot of certainty in it. I did talk to him about that they are spending a lot of manpower to relearn people because they were allowed to use their blue can for garbage as well, like we are doing right now. So it will take us, I think, that whole 15 months to get people back into trying to get them back to recycling.
The habits of separating.
Because people are already, they use that as a garbage can now, and so, what are they gonna do going forward? And I think that's a big part of this as well.
And part of cost is lack of education and compliance.
Yeah.
Because when people contaminate their recyclables with the garbage, then the costs increase.
Yeah.
When we take real garbage to the recycling plant. It makes it more expensive.
So Dave, what about the Public Works Department? You know, snow plowing, the general stuff that's not enterprise fund.
So, the snow plowing's inside of streets.
It seems like I saw Public Works.
That's our inspectors, it's made up of just our inspections department, and then, there's some transfers into that, right? Yeah, engineering, sorry.
Will we be seeing that at some point in time?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, no, no problem. Just want to be able to see that Public Works force.
Okay.
Because we've been pretty lucky on snow plowing lately, I believe. We
Yes.
haven't spent a lot of money the last 2 years,
No, we haven't.
so.
Yeah, no, I'll get you that other budget, there was just no big expenditures in that, so. But I can get that to you.
Okay, any other questions? John, any comments you have to make?
No, that was just a picture of that drying pad that we talked about. And these were just a few of the things that we can do with all of our departments. 2750 Mountain Road. You guys approved the ramp grant for the Parks Department to do that. We just want to do some upgrades around her. Their project doing that, cleaning up the road, bringing sewer up there so that they can actually have a bathroom, having a water connection. So that was one of them. I will get costs that we haven't had cost yet, because we just found out about the ramp. So we'll get costs for that. And then the old public works shop is just a cleanup. With the Shaw farm coming in, it's something that we definitely want to get cleaned up. We want to close in all of those bays. So the upper bays, there's a lot of open bays there. We would like to close those in, put nice garage doors, reface that. That would give storage to not just public works departments, or to our department, but to police, parks, other people that have some storage that we could have up there, get that cleaned up and make it more presentable. So, but I'll get those numbers as well. That's it.
John, did you have anything to add here?
Just council, I apologize on the numbers. I had told Dave to focus more on the projects and less on the numbers, although he does have a sheet of them, but we will get you updated slides that include the numbers as a summary and get them posted on our budget page so that residents can see those as well. As well as the tentative budget will include on May 10th, we'll also include all of these numbers again for the discussion before the final budget is presented in July or June or August, depending on if there's a truth and taxation process. So,
John, just so we're all on the same page, I think there's some decisions we've identified we have to digest and make. So could we accumulate what those are and get those out to the council, like, whether it's recycling, pipe relining, those things that have been discussed this evening that we need to further make decisions on. Could you do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can get that to you guys right away. So.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Mayor,
Councilman Swanson?
before we move on to your rousing presentation, 5-minute recess.
Yeah, if you can bring some caffeine back, that'd be good.
Downstairs.
Yes, let's take a 5-minute break.
Moves your blood around. Mayor, just quickly before you present. I just realized, while I was out of the room, that the presentation we just got from Public Works was a recitation of their deliverables based on the allocation that we had given them. That didn't occur to me, so that's sorry, with some of the questions that I asked.
Well, I don't think you asked any inappropriate questions. I think we are trying to connect the deliverables to the budget amount. I think we talked about the deliverable today.
He should be back, I think.
So the deliverables were identified, but
Could you use the microphone so the people online can hear?
do we have anybody online, John?
I'm sure Susan Kilborn said.
2 employees.
Oh, well, forget it.
So, Councilmember Swanson, you indicated that we saw the deliverables, what they're seeking to do with the budget numbers, which is, I think, what we want to connect. But I do believe the council ultimately deserves to see what it's going to cost to get those deliverables and how it fits within the allocated amounts that, you know, Jamie and John and myself have gone through, talked about what's available in the budget. So
I think that's what I'm saying, though, is what they presented to us are the things they believe they can do within that allocation.
I would assume so. But
I haven't seen the exact numbers, but
How do we know
that's,
that?
that's, and I didn't understand that in the presentation, so now I do.
Because the question we talked about, for instance, on capital expenditures being 90% of budget, the capital lease is a capital expenditure. So if we're talking about simply depreciation being, now we can surely make adjustments to that, but at some point in time, we have to fund these capital expenditures that are out there. That's where we got caught this year, is we had been purchasing all this equipment for the last X period of time, eating up any fund balance because we weren't keeping money from the non-cash expense of depreciation. We were just spending it as we went along. Now, all of a sudden, we get faced with, we need a new snowplow, we need a new this, that. So I think the connection between the deliverables and the numbers will come eventually. But I think the key we need to know is it within the allocated amount? I think the council needs to understand what the total allocated amount was, and if each department is living within that. Because the expectation of each council member, as Councilmember Ekstrom talked about, is their responsibility is to go through that budget, make sure that we're living within the dollar allocated amount, and that those are attached to the overall goals and objectives of the city. So each council member is responsible for that. And I think ultimately, some point in time, that reporting back to the council is, are the deliverables that have been identified affordable within the budget? So at some point in time, we need to make that connection. Because I think this council needs to know, I know you know this, Councilmember Swanson, because you've worked through the finance department, we've talked about that. But if I was to ask each one of these council members, what is our overall general fund balance? I mean, budget? Who could tell me that?
Tell you with a phone call to Jamie.
But we should know that as a council, right? So we'll get there.
So what is it, man?
I think the revenues were just under 10 million, but I get confused with the transfers in, is it 9.5? Is that what we went with? 9.6? 9.6 million. See, I was paying attention. Someone, not total. Well, let's move on then. The night's getting long. As the mayor, I represent the administrative functions for the council. So we'll be talking tonight about the administrative functions and their budget. That's comprised of human resources, the administrative department that's set up by Bryce. Human resources is with Katie.
Nice.
And we'll talk about our recorder, which is, John always tells me is required by statute, right?
Yep.
So that's one of the things we have to have. And we have a good one, by the way. We have good recorders. So I have tonight with us. Go back to that. I like that picture of Bryce. That's pretty awesome.
It's like a late night talk show host.
We have fun in our budget. Some might say we're dysfunctional, but we put the fun in dysfunctional. So in regards to human resources, we have, and I would just say this, historically, we haven't really broken these departments out separately. They were just part of an overall budget, but for accountability purposes, we have broken those out this year. So as they make their presentations, you will kind of see an effort to attach the 2 years so you can see kind of what's happened there. But Katie will talk about some of the deliverables, but my discussions with her, the main deliverables that she will kind of talk about as part of her budget is retention of current employees and building a culture that people like to work in. She'll be talking about recruitment. How can we recruit employees into the city as we grow? I think that's important that we get quality team members. And also working really with John and myself is to make sure that our salaries and benefits are competitive. I think that's part of the retention strategy in that regard. Bryce will be talking about the administrative functions of the city. You'll see in his presentation, we're getting to that tipping point where we may need another employee there. But I think the approach that we're taking there is to maybe get an intern from Weber State, bring them in and see what we can do. The challenge given to all the administrative functions is to see how we can automate as much as possible while maintaining the connection with our citizens. But I think as the city grows, we're going to find it's going to be difficult to take care of the citizens simply with hiring more employees. Dave and Public Works have a good example there is think if we were still driving around reading meters. You know, one of the things that Bryce will touch a little bit on this, the number of calls we get regarding payment of bills. You know, he's looking at a different way and a better way to do that. And then we'll hear from Susan in regards to our recorder function, what they're responsible for and some of the things she's looking at to control costs there. So let's start with you,
Okay.
Katie. And let's go through your budget slides. I haven't seen the latest and greatest. Yeah, come on up.
Okay, so we kind of broke ours down a little bit into percentages, but we've also got numbers if you guys have specific questions. But so 84% of my budget alone is the human resource manager wages and benefits. And then from there, we've got 13% personnel related costs, which includes employee recognition, employee of the year, and then employee related functions. And then we've got 3% business related costs, which is training and travel and training, our office supplies, postage and phones. You can go to the next slide, John. So included in not just mine, but we wanted to show the citywide salaries and benefits. So we kind of broke it down into the 21-22 and then the projected 22-23. And as you can see, there is going to be differences in some of those salary increases and benefits include the $95,000 full-time inspector, The $77,000 new full-time water position that Dave talked about, $70,000 for his 23rd police officer, $70,000 for a new full-time solid waste position, which Dave also talked about, and then $50,000 from a part-time community service officer to a full-time, and then $49,000 from a part-time office assistant to a full-time office assistant. Does anybody have questions on that slide? Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, do you want to go to the next slide? So changes to my specific budget. It's lowered by the $20,000 from insurance incentive, which we had last year, not included in this year. We had the $2,500 fitness program that was in last year's budget that is not included in this year's, and then $1,000 under miscellaneous funds. So my total budget this year is $110,516. Of that, it's $65,720 in salaries and wages. Employee benefits is a little over 40,000. And then the biggest part of my budget is personnel related costs, which is 16,900. So my goals for the 22-23 year is to recruit, retain, and build morale. Next slide. So to recruit, hire the right person for the job and add value to the city. And then restructure current job descriptions that we have to create strong positions for each department. In retaining employees, we've got positive morale will help retain staff and reduce staff turnover. And then listen to our current employees' needs and keep employees happy, satisfied, and give them the opportunity for growth. And then to build morale, continue to build morale. We've got positive employee morale leads to, excuse me, to an increase in productivity and efficiency in the workplace. Continue doing this by recognizing employees for the great work that they're doing. Employees should feel confident when they're here at work. Listen to employee feedback. What do employees want and need to be successful in their current positions? And then have open and maintain open communication. Next slide. So my budget is 0.004% of the whole budget. So fairly little, but I think it's very important for us to bring on good employees, to keep our employees happy, to make it a place where people want to be. So that is my part.
So Katie, you're gonna do all this on a budget of how much again?
Well, so my budget is a little over, it's about 20,000, a little over 20,000.
Well, your total budget with your salary and everything here.
Oh, is $110,516.
Okay, and a very small portion of that is for employee events. We have the Christmas party, we have the summer barbecue, etc.
Yes.
Council, some of the deliverables we talked about is setting a goal on turnover rate. So we can monitor that, get a baseline and compare against other cities. And then also number of vacancies and the time to fill vacancies. So we can see improvement there. So she's going to do this on a total budget right here, right? Of $110,000. That's the budget for Human Resource Department. Any questions on that? All right.
Well, I guess I do have a question. So Katie, does that seem sufficient for you?
So based on what we've done this past year, we kind of compared numbers. I think now that we're starting to actually do events again and you know, now that we're outside of COVID, I think that's going to be sufficient and we'll just make it work. I mean, you don't have to spend money to boost morale. So I think it'll be great. Yeah.
This is the number spent on
Personnel is 16,900.
on employee activities, which is comprised of things we mentioned.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just want to make sure. One of the responsibilities I feel like is that we let you choose what get you the resources you need to do your job well. And so that you don't feel frustrated that you don't have the resources to do what you need to do. And so I just want to make sure that I'm fulfilling my personal mission to do that. So
Yes, no, I think this is going to be great.
And Councilmember Exlin, just so you know, there is a possibility, we haven't seen the number yet, but we may be getting a refund on our last year's premiums, John. And that goes into investment in the employees. We don't take that to the bottom line of the general fund. We use that to reinvest in employees.
I like that.
Last year, we got the
20,000.
$20,000, kind of a one-time signing bonus from the insurance, and that was reinvested in employees in activities. So that's kind of how that works.
Mayor, can I ask a question, Kate?
You bet.
So when we talk about this idea of deliverables, will we have some kind of quantifiable way by the end of 2023 to see that this actually really did make a difference? So are we going to do some kind of surveys that say, oh yes, I'm so much more happy now that we've spent $16,400
Yes.
for employee activities?
So, I mean, that's the goal, obviously, is to, make people want this place of, want people to be here and want to be happy working here. I talked with John, and we're going to try to put some different metrics together to see how that is possible to start tracking. I mean, it's hard to track. Everybody has fun at parties and get-togethers and things like that. But like I said, I think building morale and things like that isn't just about the money. So my hope is that the money is helpful, but that we can start kind of rebuilding different attitudes and departments and things like that or attitudes within departments where there might be some struggles, and that's kind of my goal.
Excellent. Thank you. That's all I was curious about.
And I think that's a good question, Councilman Severing. One of the things we'll use to measure that with is the outcome of what's our turnover in comparison to other cities, and are we making improvement from where we've been over the last, say, couple of years. So we'll be measuring that. Also, I think as we continue to create the culture here, hopefully our outstanding empty positions and time to fill positions, we can improve on that. So those are some of the metrics. And then as we report to the council, we do an annual employee satisfaction survey. I think we're starting to get baselines now where we can see, if that's improving. We had to get a baseline first, so we're in our third year now. So we'll report, progress in that. As John reported last year during COVID, it was a little awkward. But we also felt that we had some pretty significant dissatisfaction. Not that that's all been cured, but I'm going to give Katie some kudos here. She said it's not all about money, but it's out doing things and being in communication with people. And, she does things special on people's birthdays, their anniversaries. She's out in the department, she's listening, so I think those are the things that also contribute to some metrics in regards to turnover and employee satisfaction. So those are the things we have to measure. But we're open for any other things you'd like us to measure.
One of the things that I think, in my own business too, it's the same thing, that people want to know that they're valued and recognized and appreciated and connected. And I think all of these things that you're doing are spot on for each of those things. So, when we try, we invest in a party, that's a connection activity. That's really the goal. And, if you feed them, they will come. I mean, it's kind of like,
If you get pizza man, they will. come
right?
or something.
Just like, yeah, part of why I love our business is for that. It's like good food, people can connect over good food and activities that they enjoy. I thought that bowling was so much fun. It was great. And I think you're just doing a really good job of picking things and, choosing prizes and recognition and things like that. I'm really pleased with I think it naturally comes from you. You love that. So thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We believe this is within our allocated amount, right?
Yes. Yes, I would.
Just wanted to point that out.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I am now just recovering from my injury from the bowling activity. Councilmember Ekstrom. All right, let's go to the next slide, John.
You went backwards.
You want to do Bryce or Susan next?
Let's go with Bryce. Bryce, come on up.
All right, so, I guess I'll start off with the whole number and then we can go into the percentages. So my total budget is made up of $402,000. $140,000 of that is allocated out to other departments. And so 98% of that number is salary, wages, and benefits. And this does include our city manager and attorney, which his contract is $104,000 yearly. And I wanted to point out that that position is usually held by two separate people. And so
John
that,
works for cheap.
yeah. And so that's one area that we're able to save costs is we're able to have some positions that do multiple jobs. And I guess that would be another example of that as the administrative services manager and treasurer. So that's another, two positions that are combined in this department. So positions within our department, we have 2 administrative assistants who help with building permits, business licenses, offers coverage for the counter here, which is the main centralized point for customer service. And we are hoping to hire 1 part-time intern who can help us to keep up on all of our scanning and filing and office work. And then we have 2.5, enterprise employees. These help with all the public works, so water, sewer, solid waste. They really help them do all the reports, work orders, take the calls. And that's the main thing that we focus on in our department is both, inside customer service as well as residential customer service. We're the first point of contact in most cases, unless they decide to, jump up to you guys, which case, usually we end up back with it anyways. So, okay, next slide. So 1% of my budget is travel and training. This makes up John, the city manager and attorney's required training, as well as building permit technician training, business license trainings, and other trainings that we need to keep us educated on what's going on, as well as certifications that each of us all hold. And then 1% of the budget is business related costs. These are office supplies, postage, subscriptions, memberships, phones, other things like that, just costs of, running and keeping residents happy. So next. So some of our goals for next year, which keeping in mind our, overlying goal is to help make sure residents' questions and complaints are being answered, or they're being transferred off to the employee who can help them the best, if it's not us. We're also looking into researching technology to improve and streamline processes. This is both for within and out. So some examples of this are we're working on implementing a phone system that not only, are we all on one phone system throughout the whole city, but it also gives us the capability to host meetings from it and Zoom calls with each other and other things like that, better communication within, as well as eventually work on virtually centralizing everything. Someone can come into this office and they don't have to necessarily meet with someone here. We can set them up virtually to meet with anyone within the city, as well as our building permit software we're working on. Up until October, we took all building permits as paper, and quite the process, and everything from paper we have to scan digitally. So we've worked on just implementing a new software where everything comes in digitally. The resident or contractor can now see the status of it. It just works out better, a little bit less calls for us as far as where things are at. A few other things that we're looking at, Mayor mentioned, I'm working on trying to change a little bit the utility payments so that calls that come in will automatically go to Express Bill Pay, which is who we use to process those. So our utility clerks, they take 300 calls a month just to pay utility bills.
And so if that's something that we can automate or work on, and not doing ourselves, that'll frees up a lot of time when you think about, you know, how long it takes to actually process the payment on the phone, and we do that 300 times a month. And then we start over again. So, and then our next goal is to provide learning opportunities for staff, maximize the role that we all fulfill. So we want to make sure that, one, we're educated in what we're doing, and two, to see what other cities are doing, what the leading technology has that's available, to see if we can do it better or more efficient or less, you know, if we can offset the growth of the city, and instead of hiring employees, if we can find technology that is maybe a one-time cost or a smaller yearly cost than the price of an employee, it's worth it. And then educate residents on how to better utilize services that the city provides for them. That's one thing we get. I mean, a lot of the times the calls we get are, how do we do this? How do we do this? And if we can better educate, you know, residents, or create a platform where they can go to receive education on how to do things, I think that will help us a lot too, as well as take the call volume down. Let's see if the next slide. So my budget makes up like 0.01% of the total city budget. So everything on the slide, you know, will fit in that pretty good. So yeah, I think that's everything. So
Bryce, one of the things we've talked about, and your total budget is 402,000. It's a little bit more than last year if we hire this intern, as I believe, and the salary increases, but it's not totally unrealistic, even though it's hard because we've now broken this department out separately for accountability purposes. One of the things we talked about a little bit in regards to measurements is, as you know, we were being criticized fairly heavily for not being able to process building permits and get inspections on a timely basis. So we're hoping with this, even though it's been, I don't know how to describe it, Bryce, but it's, you know, it's been hard for the contractors who have used paper for so many years to get this, but I think we're getting a good database built, so we'll be able to monitor the processing time of those things as we move forward. So, okay, thanks, Bryce. Susan?
Do we have to ask questions?
I just looked right in that light before I walked down here. Okay. My total budget after the admin fee offset is 111,553. And we did it into percentages of the wages and benefits are 79%. As you will remember, both myself and Joyce, who's the deputy, are both part-time. And so that's we lost 2 full-time people for us to fill in the city recorder position. So we kind of have shifted some of the duties, but 2 part-time people now take it over that office. We're looking at also adding additional part-time benefits to be more competitive in the market and retention, things like having sick leave, holiday pay. We get holiday pay, vacation, and a 401k, things that we hadn't been offered before. So we're looking at doing that with the mayor's help there. And then moving next to the professional services, as we've talked in several city council meetings, you know that our minutes are contracted out, and that is 11% of my budget. And as we've talked, we're working on limiting the amount of those written minutes to offset with the technology, and then that would overall lower that contract price once we can kind of get going on some of the technology. And then I have computer services, things that I have to pay for, like our records management software things, so that, like as Bryce was saying, when we digitize, everything is now like cloud-based versus papers all in the basement as well. So, and then I have an agenda management software that helps us create all of our agendas, packets, and post them on the website. So it kind of helps us keep everything there. And then just below that, that's the solution I've been talking about, the live webcast for city council meetings. That's kind of what I'm hoping to add soon. And we'll talk about that here shortly. 3% is my travel, training, and memberships. I'm a member of the International Institute of Municipal Clerks, the Utah Municipal Clerks. I'm currently a certified municipal clerk and almost going to be a master municipal clerk, and I also will be state certified. And so these are things that I go and basically help us stay compliant with legislation. It's kind of what I go and learn. And then I have my other offset of business related office supplies, postage, phone, public notices as well on mine. So the goals for myself is to continually improve transparency through the technology, as like I want to do with our webcasting of our meetings. And then another one is our records management. You probably don't know that most of our records have life cycles. We either have to keep them for a year and then destroy them up to permanent. And we have to manage all of our records in different ways. And so that's quite a large process. And I'm actually meeting with the state archives next week to try and kind of become more efficient with that for our city. So those are some of my goals. That one shouldn't cost any money, but just kind of some things that we need to move towards. And I am 0.004% like Katie. We're about the same. So, John, we want to talk about the offset of the live cast, or what do you?
So we wouldn't, I mean, we could, I was thinking we mentioned in staff comments.
Okay.
Since it doesn't deal with next year's budget.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, is there anything else?
Any questions?
I have the same question. It's just, do you feel like you have the resources you need to do your job and be happy in it? That's really, it was my question for Bryce too. And same with John. It's like, do you feel like you have a manageable workload? Do you have a good, do you have enough time? Do you have enough resources? Do you have what you need to say, I'm glad I get to go to my job?
Well, as you notice, we added Katie so that she could help be a deputy, just to kind of offset, because some of these meetings with me being part-time, it offsets in what I can do during the day. And so sometimes it's helpful to have her, Joyce, during certain weeks, help me offset some of those. And I have a family, but just, those type of things. And then we will bring up, sounds like in the staff comment of something that I do, we will need some money for on some things, just to kind of help us improve. But overall, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mayor, can I make a comment before you do?
Okay.
Thank you. So just kind of to follow up with what Councilwoman Ekstrom said, I have noticed on occasion that you send out emails to us that are kind of later in the evening. So are you really getting enough time to do what you need to do?
They've given me the flexibility that I do things from home as well.
Okay.
And so there's some days like, or I don't get the staff reports in the timely manner that I need, that it does offset at different times. So it depends, like as being part-time, I do have more flexibility and I do flex at home sometimes too. And so that works well for me. And then, like I said, it just depends on when things come to me too.
Okay.
When things get posted a lot of times.
Because we don't want you working till 11 o'clock at night.
That's
Send
not
out
my
packets.
goal either, but sometimes that's, where I'm at.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I would just point out that I think Susan asked to be part-time in this job because of the other commitments she has, and we have provided that flexibility. And as part of our retention process, we are looking, most of you who are engaged with having employees, work from home is now almost expected, where it makes sense for both parties, for the city and for the employee. And so where we can do that and it makes sense, we are allowing that to take place. You heard Susan talk real quickly here that when you look at it in the part-time environment today, we have not offered, 401k or vacation days, which I think is non-competitive. And John, I know you have that number because we looked at it to add the benefits we're talking about. Why don't we just wrap up with that, knowing that it's within the budget that's been allocated, but we we are looking at that very strongly to make sure that we can retain part-time employees too. Councilman Swanson?
Just one quick question. The proposed budgets of the 3 departments is 625,000. What was the allocation?
That, I believe that is the allocation.
That's the total allocation?
Yeah.
Perfect.
For that.
Okay, thank you.
After the admin transfer, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the admin transfer that they reference is, the responsibilities they perform for other parts of the city. We do bill them and it comes in as an offset, so. But yeah, this is within the allocation amount that we've been given. 625. Okay, and it's hard. We talked about kind of doing a comparison to last year, but this is really the first year we've broken those out for accountability and measurement purposes, so. So John, you remember what that number was to provide those part-time benefits?
For the 401k, it is $13,161.
And then we do have a little bit with vacation, things of that nature, but Councilman Barker?
Is that for all of our part-time employees?
Yes.
Okay.
That aren't just seasonal, it's.
Right.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that for the seasonal,
Right.
but for, yeah, basically, I guess, permanent part-time, that would apply to that, so. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. All right, enough of that. We will move on now to item number 7. Bryce is still with us. He's going to talk to us briefly about an investment policy that was in the packet and see if you have any questions on that. Maybe give the reason we are looking at this. Bryce?
Okay, so can we combine 7 and 8 and I talk about both policies at once?
We
Or we do
probably
one at a
could.
time? That's fine.
We can vote separately, but if you want to make the presentations,
Okay, just only
Go ahead.
1 more hour and I'll be done.
then you'll be here by yourself.
Okay, so
Making the
the
presentation.
investment policy, hopefully you all got a chance to kind of read over it. Basically what it covers though is it touches on, ethics, some of the controls that we want to put in place, as well as selection of investment and brokers. A lot of this comes from the Utah Money Management Council. And so it's something that I would like to put in place and get adopted so that we can start working on an investment and start, getting some of that money we have in savings to maybe generate a little more revenue for the city over time instead of, just collecting there. And so, do you have any questions on that policy?
Why don't you emphasize the fact that the investments we'd be looking at, the key thing is preservation of principal. So we're not going to get into cryptocurrency, chief, with the city's money. But I think it's the preservation of principal. And one of the questions I had with the policy was, the rating on commercial paper at A-. I think we might want to look at that and maybe stay in the A or A+ on commercial paper, but.
And I think that was just to establish a minimum. We will not go below that, but.
So Mayor, I'm kind of curious, give me an example of what this means.
So what this means is
I
every
thought you
year,
were first talking about like investments for the employees and all of a sudden it shifted over to city.
sorry, yeah.
So we're talking about the city, we're talking about using city money to invest in what? Stocks, bonds?
In the policy, there are approved things we can invest in, like CDs up to X amount based upon FDIC insurance limitations, commercial paper, high grade commercial paper, CDs. How much, Jamie, do we have in the state fund? Between all, including the money we have right now for the building of the $30 million.
So that's within the PTIF, which is the state public treasurer's fund. And what Bryce is talking about is diversifying.
Yeah, and what rate are we getting on that these days?
I know it was 0.46, but I can't remember if that was the end of February or the end of March, because I'm reconciling. I want to say it's the end of March.
That's what I think.
0.46.
Of a percent.
Of a percent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, our investments are
That
not,
preserves
they're not
principal.
even keeping up with inflation.
So to give you an example, for instance, let's say we put $5 million in high grade commercial paper. Instead of 0.46%, just as an example, it might be 0.95%. So we'd pick up 0.5% on our money. Now, what we're gonna have to evaluate is risk versus reward, right? Because the last thing we want to do is put any of the citizens' money at unnecessary risk. So I think that's what Bryce is asking for here in the policy is, first of all, do we want to go outside the state fund? And second of all, it kind of sets out in there what we can do. So the purpose is using good money management principles, can we enhance a rate of 0.46 or whatever it may be going forward? And it's not an all or nothing. We'll make sure. Councilman Swanson.
What is the liquidity of these investments?
Great question.
I mean, once we tie up, say we had that whole 30 million, or we decide that we're gonna take 20 million of it and tie that up in A or A plus. I agree with Mayor that we ought to stick with A or A plus. Once we tie monies up with this commercial paper, when we need that money, how easy is it to get to that money?
They're publicly traded generally, and they're short term. You can, pick terms on the
We can
commercial
pick the terms
paper.
on
And I think this would get us involved in probably projecting cash needs. So, if we needed money in 30 days, we'd probably do 30-day commercial paper, but we might look at 6-month CD if we know we're not going to need that money for that period of time. So it would, I think, kind of in some degree, get us into cash needs projection more than maybe we have now. Because Jamie, we don't want her to get bored by any means, so.
And I think in the policy it does talk about liquidity a little bit as it goes down to sort of define it, limit it, make sure we still stay within a range of that. So.
Okay, Mayor, then my next question is oversight on the investing. Is that Jamie and Bryce's job? Is that part of your responsibilities? Do we hire an outside investment? Who's watching the store?
We'd use outside investment
Ideally, me and the mayor and Jamie, if she would like to be involved, would sit down and we would look at brokers that have been approved by the Utah Money Management Council. And we would probably hire a consultant or go with one of these brokers to help us in this or to do it.
And we would retain decision-making. They would just be giving us recommendations.
Gotcha.
So decision-making would lie. And that's one of the things the council needs to decide is what type of oversight do they want, reporting. I'm not sure you just want to leave it up to the mayor and Bryce. You'd want regular reporting because, some mayors may be more financially astute than others. And so even though decision-making may be at that level, reporting needs to be, I think, pretty transparent to the council.
Are these brokers, sorry,
Well, go ahead, Councilman Swanson.
are these brokers fee-based, percentage, flat rate?
That's what we'd have to investigate. And obviously what we're looking for is net return, right? So, we'd have to talk to the brokers and see what their fee bases are. We don't know that at this point in time.
And the main goal for this is mostly just to get it going. There's nothing, this is just the early steps in it. So just so we can start looking at it, obviously we would do some investigating. We could always report, like the mayor said, report back on any findings.
I think, we being a recommendation after we do the discussions with the brokers, explaining, what their fee bases are and what our recommendation would be, and the council would approve the broker if we decide to go that route.
And then, Mayor, is another question. So we set up this investment kind of strategy, and then the oversight would still remain with the mayor and the council. I mean, I'm fine with Mayor Berube. I don't know if I'm gonna be fine with the next mayor, you know, I'm assuming you're not gonna
Chief's
stay
pretty
in
good
this
at it. He's
forever.
got accounting background.
But yeah, so, you know, we're gonna have different levels of financial acuity, I guess we would say, you know, but Mayor Berube has got a lot of it. But yeah, I think that needs to be maybe
Yeah.
set forth as far as like, you know, this is how we do it, just like you were doing with the budget, kind of what are the rules we're gonna follow as far as decision making about that.
And I think once, you know, the council is responsible for a strategy, you know, what's our target? Do we want to shoot for, 50 basis points over the, once we develop a strategy, then we can follow it. So I think what Bryce is after tonight is just the approval of the policy, if you have any changes in it, so that we can begin the process. So do you have any suggestions? You had a chance to read the policy. I think I would recommend we change the commercial paper to at least A or A+.
A and A+, yeah.
That'd be my only suggestion for a change as far as like looking over this. It looks good to me. What do we need to do as far as getting it going? Do we need to pass something, or do we just kind of give you a nod?
Yeah, we need to approve the policy as been presented.
Okay.
Any, Councilman Dalpas?
Have we ever had anything like this that we know of for the city? Because, I mean, obviously right now is a really important time with inflation. We're not even going, even with a higher percentage back, we're still gonna be essentially losing money because inflation is so high. So I'm guessing we've never done anything like this that we know of?
Not that I'm aware of, and particularly if you look at it, we've got $6.5 million, 6.7, I can't remember the exact number. We're paying about 1.9% on, earning 46 basis points. So we've got a negative arbitrage of about 1.5% on that money just sitting there. So I think Councilman Dalpaz's comment is really viable in the fact that, we're falling behind. I saw today that inflation in Utah's over 10%. But we won't seek out 10% investments.
That's
Crypto.
risky side.
Any other questions? Then I would be looking for a motion to approve the investment policy has been presented by Bryce. Do we have a motion to approve the investment policy?
Mayor, I move that we approve the investment policy as outlined by Bryce, with the exception of changing the rating to A or A+.
Okay, do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Swanson. Is there any further discussion? All right, Councilmember Dalpaz, are you in favor of this?
Aye.
Councilmember Swanson,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Councilmember Severing,
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Let's move on to the next item, Bryce, which is your cash receipting policy.
So, this policy is to establish a policy for the city and employees as far as, I guess, the policy for receiving cash. So this identifies a lot of the internal controls we have in place currently, spells them out, puts them down so that they're clear for everyone to see, as well as this will help us on our fraud assessment. So hopefully it'll bring that rating up a little bit that we were talking about earlier. So having this policy in place is one of the things that they look for. And so if we can pass this one, it'll help that, as well as help secure and maintain city assets as we go about our daily business and receiving cash, or receiving cash.
Which includes checks, et cetera. One of the questions I had is, why are we allowing 3 days for a deposit? I mean, right now it's, first of all, I hate to have checks and cash laying around. But as interest rates increase, we might as well be earning the money. But if I read that correctly, it allowed for up to 3 days to make a deposit.
So I think most of what that allows us is if I'm sick or if Jamie's sick, it allows us time to get the money to the bank. A lot of time we are balancing everything the next day. It just allows us a little bit of a buffer. We can definitely narrow that down, and in the internal controls, it does limit who can and can't do certain things. And taking the bank deposit is something that, there has to be a separation from the people who balance it, take the money versus who's taking the deposit. And so we just wanted to make sure we allow enough time that in a worst case scenario, we're still making it and following the policy.
Yeah, I've always believed you can make exceptions to the policy, but if you have 3 days, that becomes the policy oftentimes. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I just, things can get lost and laying around, and that's the only comment I had. I don't know how the council feels about. I mean, we know things are gonna happen occasionally, but when you set the policy out 3 days, I don't know, John, you were the controller of Ogden City. How do you feel about having things lay around for 3 days?
With the controls that you can establish, I don't have a problem with that, because if you said the policy is 1 day, and then occasionally you have these, then when your auditor comes in, bang, you're not following your policy. But if you have a policy of 3 days, you can demonstrate that you're doing it every day, then it's not an audit issue.
So our goal ought to be to get it in the next day, but give ourselves some room for compliance is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. There you go.
So it is part of staff. It's our accountant that does the daily balancing right now, and it is her on her list to do every day, that she balances every day. And her and Bryce work really well. So it's also state statute that it's done within 3 days. And just so you know that the auditors do look, and they do trace it from the second that we get it, they follow it all the way to the bank.
Okay, well, good. It's good to
So
know
it
that.
is-
We'll leave
it is-
ourselves some
it
room
is
then.
practice.
We don't want to be violating, so. But our practice is basically next day, unless there's something that comes up. Okay? Any other discussion on cash receipting? Do you have something?
I did.
Councilmember
I was
Ekstrom?
just curious, if you don't mind my asking. I mean, I've seen, in our business, particularly, cash coming in is very minimal and checks are almost non-existent. So, I mean, as a percentage, what are we talking about as far as like receipts go? Credit card versus, some sort of card or electronic versus cash?
So I know it's gonna sound funny, but I'm not sure I wanna say how much we get in checks because we're moving it around. And so it's probably, I think you're right that there's not a lot of cash for sure.
Okay.
But I just don't want to give out numbers where someone might then see the person taking the money over as a target for
That makes sense.
things like that. So
Yeah. No, I was just wondering, like, as a percentage of daily receipts.
Yeah.
kind of like how many.
Number or dollar?
Yeah, I was taking just a
Oh, like a
percentage number.
percentage, okay.
Yeah, not, I don't.
okay.
Because
This is one thing that Mayor and I are very different. It's like, you tell me an amount and it goes right out of my head. And so it's like, no, it was something, Mayor remembers numbers. I remember strings of numbers. But, I just wondered, it's like, how much is it, are there still a lot of people paying in cash or is it still pretty
not much
small?
in cash, but I can tell you when you get, what's the fee you charge on a building permit? 3% if you use a credit card?
Yes.
Yeah.
That puts things in perspective.
Okay.
That and, well,
Okay.
But we get very little cash.
Well, that makes sense to me though. So if we are actually passing the credit card surcharge on to the resident, then they're, I write like 2 checks a year. That would be one of them I would do, especially for a building permit that's fairly high.
Yeah, if you have a building permit for $20,000 and they tack 3% on it, it's a bit of money.
Right?
so, and we don't pass that 3%, the 3% on the utility bills, but on the building and everything else it is passed on.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay, anything else, Bryce? Anything on the cash receipting policy before we move forward? I don't see any questions, so could I have a motion to approve the cash receiving policy as presented in your packet?
Mayor, I recommend that I make a motion that we pass this policy for cash receiving as presented by Bryce Nelson.
Thank you, Councilmember Dalpaz. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Second, any further discussion? I see no discussion. So, Councilmember Ekstrom? You in favor? We're gonna do a roll call vote here.
Oh, yes.
Councilmember Dalpaz?
Yes.
Councilmember Barker?
Yes.
Councilmember Swanson?
Yes.
Councilmember Severing?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Bryce, very much.
Thank you.
Jamie, do you want to talk to us about proposed budget amendments for the fiscal year 2021 and 2022? I don't think they're too extensive, but
I sure do.
along with the fee schedule changes, if any.
So as included in the packet, we do have a budget amendment for our first sales tax bond interest payment of $42,000. That's due May 1st. The idea there is to decrease the transfer to CIP by that 42,000. And then
Construction in progress. Capital
improvements project, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Improvements fund.
At the
Thank
end of
you,
the
Mary.
night, I can't remember acronyms.
Capital improvements.
Thank you.
And then I also hear that a police car needs to be on the table for the transfer. Is that true, Mayor?
Well, I kind of thought so. I don't think we have any officers on horses in the city. So if we're gonna have an officer, I think we need a car for him.
Sounds
get a
like it.
motorcycle?
All right, I got the PO.
Scooter.
Just so you know, I did it. So we have a signed, sealed, and delivered, as long as it's passed. So that would also reduce our capital improvements transfer as well. I put on there $50,000 as a round number. And the reason why I did that, sorry, this wasn't included because this just came to me today. We've received an additional $16,000 in property taxes above and beyond what was expected. And so when we take that into consideration, adding this 50,000 to the budget makes our capital improvements transfer around 486,000 down from the 562. So that includes the interest payment and the vehicle.
Although I believe sales tax is the transfer is based upon the budgeted sales tax, is that correct?
Yes.
And we have a little bit more than we budgeted.
Well, we do, but I just haven't increased that yet.
Right, but when you say the transfer, we're talking about reductions.
Reduction.
At the end of the
yes.
year, there's a high probability.
Yes, there's a
Yes.
high probability.
We'll be transferring more.
Than 486, and hopefully those numbers will be coming in June.
Mhm.
But for right now, on paper,
Right.
we'll be reducing it from 562 to 486.
We like talking right now.
And then, yes. Okay, we're good. Okay.
Just a reminder, I think we had 500,000 when we figured the amount to borrow for the public safety building. I believe we included around 500,000
Yes.
in that number. So you're right, Councilman Swanson, you don't want to spend money before you have it. But we do know that we have quite a bit of amount over budget in sales tax. So I think we'll still be fine at the 500 with these budget amendments, I guess is what I'm trying to communicate.
And then I should say the third item in question is we need to talk about how to spend the ARPA dollars that we received. Currently in the budget for 22, we have the 2.4 million going into the capital improvements fund. But it is staff recommendation, and Dave touched on it a little bit tonight in his presentation, that we redirect that 2.4 million of ARPA money to the water fund to help build that 2 million gallon water tank, up there on 2100 North. It's either, I get confused between well 2 or Randall Reservoir up there. And then that project is approximately about $2.5 million. So this 2.4 million of ARPA money would get us close. And that's all I have.
Okay, so we're gonna have a public hearing. I'd like to open the public hearing now to address these proposed budget amendments. So the hearing is now open. If any of the public would like to comment, or anyone online.
Just one staffer.
We're down to one. We've lost one. Anyone like to comment as part of our public hearing? Get a motion to.
Mayor, move to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanson. Second. All right, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, public hearing is closed. So now, council members, I'd look for a motion to approve the budget amendments as presented by Jamie for the fiscal year 2021. Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve the budget amendments as presented by Jamie for fiscal year 2021-22.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Ekstrom. Any further discussion? I'm just so pleased that our new police officer doesn't have to ride a horse. I'm very excited about that. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we will take a roll call vote on the motion. Councilmember Swanson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Councilmember Severing.
Yes.
Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalpass.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We'll now talk about amending the consolidated fee schedule. Jamie, if you'd like to report on that. Amending the fee schedule.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So on the current fee schedule, we have a new fee under building permits. This is a stop work or a red tag, I guess it's more familiar with, for failure to obtain a building permit. And staff is recommending a $250 for the first offense and $1,000 for each additional offense. I don't know if you want to elaborate a little more on that, John.
So council, just so you're aware, the way that typically works and police does this is code enforcement. There's a warning before there's the red tag. And with this, if it was a repeat offender, meaning it was the same builder, typically a licensed contractor, it would, the second offense would immediately be the $1,000. So it's meant to penalize those who are ignoring the rules.
And I believe the $1,000 is like every time, right? After, regardless of time.
Yeah.
Doesn't reset.
And it doesn't happen a lot, but we need the sledgehammer because we do have occasionally those who will ignore our requests.
Is $250 a sledgehammer?
No, $1,000.
The $1,000, I think, is.
Yeah, I don't even think $1,000 is.
Well, so in theory, it could be fined every day that they're working without a permit. So most projects would go south pretty quick if they're paying a $1,000 a day fine.
Might we make that the first offense?
And that's up for council.
That was my question, but like,
I think sometimes we put a little Band-Aid on something and I mean, to me, $10,000 whack the first time.
Wow, you're getting aggressive. Councilman Barker.
I'm just thinking, you know what, an account.
We have a lot of citizens that don't know they need to get a permit.
Well, this is a building permit for developer, right?
No.
No,
this is for
anybody.
Tech project.
That's what I was gonna ask. We don't
So
have
this could
many
be a normal
contractors that
citizen.
start building without. a
Okay,
building
well, that's
permit.
different. I interpreted that as I interpreted that as a developer contractor who's trying to build without.
So it would be anybody, which again is why there's usually a warning
Okay.
before the red tag. The most likely person to offend this is the resident who doesn't know. Most of them will come in and they would usually charge them a minimum $55 building inspection fee. The highest offender that's a professional group is roofers.
So can I just explain myself? What came back to my mind is Village and Prominent Point. That's what was my first thought, so
So,
10,000 might be a little too extreme.
well, and we can't distinguish between the offense unless we go back into the code and distinguish between the offenses. Because in theory, and this is to put it into perspective, because I think you're right. Technically, if you change the pipes under your sink, you should probably be getting a building permit. Most people interpret it if you're opening the wall cavity to work on pipes or electricity, you should get a building permit. So if you switch your outlets out, that's technically requires a building permit.
You might as well bill me.
Yeah.
$10,000.
But so
What I'm just saying is that's pretty,
if you would like some cushion for people who unknowingly do it, then, and you're not comfortable with the warning, then we should create some distinguishment in our code that if it's this type of a permit, you're okay. If it's this type, then here's where the penalty comes in. I can tell you this fee is after pretty much the professionals, because those who are residents typically say, oh, I didn't know I needed a permit for my deck. And luckily at that point, we can still inspect most things, including the foundations, and make sure everything's okay. But it's the, and the other thing, and I should have mentioned this, the reason we need a penalty is the state cannot take any action against a licensed contractor unless they've been fined by the city. And so that's the one of the tools we're after, is to be able to penalize them so the state can.
Should this apply to a licensed contractor? Is that the term we want to put? Because I do agree that there's so many things the citizens don't understand that they need a building permit for. I mean, if it's a licensed contractor, they surely should know.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a violation of, like equal protection or anything like that. The idea being that it's an expectation is it's a professional group. I mean, our street cut permits and fines are always professional entities, because no one goes out into the street typically on their own and just starts digging. So.
Exactly, the people that should know better.
Councilman Swanson, do you have a comment?
Just a comment question. If the fine is being applied after a warning, so whether you're an everyday resident or you're a professional contractor, either way, you've been warned, right? So the fine would come after you needed a permit, you were told you need a permit, you chose not to get a permit at that point, because you can't claim you didn't know anymore, because you did know. And then the inspector comes back out and you still haven't bothered with the permit.
But if you read this, it says first offense, $250 for the first offense.
Right, that's the first time that you get fined. Each time you get fined after that, it would be 1,000.
I don't think it says anything about the first one being a warning though, does it?
Well, that's what John was saying. John, so how does the ordinance read? Is a warning always given when it's discovered? Or is that a discretionary thing that the fine could be applied on first discovery?
So I can just tell you what code enforcement and the building inspectors do, and that is they always give a warning, but we could add some language that indicates that the 250 would come. The stop work tag would be issued after a written warning or something like that, to make it clear that we have a document that proves that we warned them.
Well, I think that also goes then back to the everyday resident versus a professional contractor, who should know right from the very beginning. Do we give a warning to the professional where we would give a warning to the resident? And should we put that in the language so that that's clear? If we can even able to do that.
So it would be easier to put the warning language in than to try and differentiate between the groups.
Okay.
It's safer to go that route.
Okay.
To require a warning.
So that then takes me back to Blake's earlier comment. Is after you've received a warning and you know that there's a step you need to take to be in compliance, and you willingly choose not to take that step, is $250 a sledgehammer.
You know, I must point out, we're in violation of our policy. We're past 9:30.
Mayor, I move that we postpone this item and item 11, move right to public comments and then adjourn our meeting.
Okay, we have a motion by,
Well, can I add something on this?
well,
I'm just, sorry, go ahead. You tell me what I need to
I
do.
think we have a motion.
Okay.
We can have discussion.
Well, I just wanted to add to the motion.
Go for it.
Okay,
What would you like added?
well, I just think if we're gonna bring back point number 10.
Oh, sorry, we voted on 10, didn't we?
Excuse me.
Oh,
No,
we
that's what,
haven't.
That's what we're talking about right now.
so if we're gonna bring that back, then maybe we need to reevaluate what we would, I mean, I'm feeling kind of guilty, John, if I change my faucet without getting a building permit. So if I change an electric, if I change a light fixture in my home, I'm now guilty because I didn't get a building permit.
So, Councilman Severing, do you want to meet with me and we can go through kind of maybe some solutions to maybe expand this a little bit for when we bring it back?
I think it would be worth consideration.
Are there other fee changes here that we could make and just exclude this one? Jamie,
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
what else do we have here?
So we have the North Shore Aquatic Center from last time, just need of items there. The military and family stays at 5, the senior citizen stays at $350 for the entrance fee. And then we are still in need of adding the Ducky Dipper for $21. That's something that's been going on for quite some time. It just wasn't ever in the fee schedule. And then we do have increase in tackle football from 118 to 130 per player. This is just for the cost of increase in uniforms. And then we do have the Central Weaver Improvement District impact fee going up $55, and that's just passed through to them from 25.23 to 25.78.
Okay, I think that was in the packet, so we could have a motion to approve the fee schedule exclusive of the Councilman Severing hammer rule that's included in there. Yes, Councilmember Dow passed.
I just wanted to double check. I think it's the military and their family that the price was changed, right? Because I'm looking down here on the 4 down lines up with senior citizens and 5 down lines up with military and family.
Can you go to that?
On page 10, on page 67 of the packet.
So when we looked at this, military and family was at 5, and I think in here it said 5 and then $3 or something.
It's not what I'm seeing on this one, 67. So it shows to me senior citizen $5 and military and family going from $4 to $350.
Right, so when we first did this 2 months ago,
They were raising it.
when I read it, I thought the increase was going to $4. But this is my correction, that it's supposed to be at $350. We checked all the fees on sports sites to make sure that it is at $350.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councilmember Dow pass. Are there any other questions on this before we seek a motion to approve the consolidated fee schedule exclusive of the Councilman Severing sledgehammer fee, which would be the $250 for having a building permit? Do we have a motion to that?
Mayor, I'll move that we approve what's the resolution number?
05-2022. Resolution 05-2022.
Approve resolution 05-2022, amending the consolidated fee schedule as discussed, omitting the changes to the what?
Stop work, red tag.
The stop work red tag severing hammer rule.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
A second by Councilmember Ekstrom. Is there any further discussion on that? We'll move to a roll call vote then. Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Councilmember Severing.
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Councilmember Swanson.
Yes.
Councilmember Dowpass.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. I think we now have another motion on the, we have another motion on the table.
Mayor, I'll amend my motion that we postpone item number 11 to our next council meeting.
Okay.
And we move right to public comments.
Okay, we have a motion to exclude item number 11, which are council reports. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that would be postponed till the next upcoming meeting. We now have public comments. Do we have anybody that wants to make a public comment? You're brave, John.
Having been in meetings that last much longer than 9:30. Just briefly, John Arrington, 254 East 2900 North. I just want to comment about some things that have been discussed tonight. I think that the professional, state and local organizations that Susan and Jamie, and I assume Bryce belong to, are invaluable in performing their jobs. They get to interact with some very good people who do the same job, as well as training sessions, which are so broad that they couldn't be enumerated. Anyway, I just appreciate their efforts in that behalf. One other comment, when you discussed earlier about putting out notices to the public about what you're doing using Facebook and the website, I would suggest, and I don't know if it's proper, that you might also use the North Ogden Connection magazine. I think you would get broader coverage, people reading that, because if you're not interested in city government, you're not going to these websites. But if you got a magazine, you might just read the article. So,
John, I don't know
appreciate all-
if you've seen that we try to give a council report what's coming up in the Connection
Yeah.
magazine, because we do find a lot of people read that.
But I do think, you know, like when you're talking about these fee increases and things that would get to more people.
Okay.
But I do appreciate the job you do, and again, the professional attitude and performance of your staff when I've had an opportunity to talk to them. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, any other public comments? John, I don't think anybody's online. Last we checked.
Right.
All right. Does the council or staff have any comments? Councilmember Barker.
Yeah, we can do this, the first one next meeting, but it's somebody's birthday coming up.
Yeah,
And
Tomorrow, I
as
think, isn't
somebody
it?
that had a birthday in January, I get to point out when birthdays are so that we can sing to them.
wow.
We can do that next meeting.
Yeah, I think we'll delay that for next minute. It is Councilmember Dowpass's birthday, I think tomorrow.
I won't forget.
Isn't it tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow. Happy birthday to you, Councilmember.
And then one
Yeah,
last
okay.
thing. Northview Fire has been doing training. I was just gonna point that out we're doing countywide fire training, so you will see a lot of smoke coming up from our station. This is coming from the state of Utah, has the approval of the state fire marshal's office. We're trying to do everything we can, but there is smoke coming up.
Yes, I did hear from some.
And it is vital in training because it is teaching our firefighters when smoke goes from smoke to flames. And you don't want to be caught in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So.
Thank you. John.
Just the one item that Susan alluded to. So you haven't been presented the council budget yet for next year. But we do anticipate with her transparency that we will be including a $5,000 hardware purchase for the Granicus meeting management equipment. So that just, everyone's giving me head nods. I'm just assuming that means yes, but that'll be coming as part of that next presentation.
We'll be excited to see the next presentation. And John? All right, anything else? Councilmember Ekstrom.
Just a shout out and a thank you to Bowen for helping put the Public Works PowerPoint presentation together, because that was a lot of work and I appreciate that because I had zero PowerPoint skills. So thanks him.
And just one other thing before we adjourn here, Dave had some comments that we need to keep an eye on the banners along Washington Boulevard. Some of them are getting pretty faded and ugly. You keep an eye on that. I think that's Public Works, isn't it? Last I checked. So, okay. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn.